Hey everyone, hello. I hope all of you have settled down. And yeah, very good afternoon and a very warm welcome to everyone who have present here and the ones who have joined us online. Hey, let me introduce myself. A quick introduction. I am Akanksha, here working at GeekyAnts as a senior software developer. So here we at GeekyAnts love to challenge ourselves and play around with latest technologies and also with Flutter. And I'm a Flutter developer too. So here we are with the Flutter meetup, wherein we are going to discuss a lot of interesting topics, which are like probably Riverpod state management and how does the Flutter engine works behind the scenes. That would be amazing, right? And how to na- migrate the existing native apps to Flutter apps. And also, at the end, we are also someone from our team are going to introduce to how to prepare oneself for to give a Flutter interview. So these are the series of talks we have, and of course, the panel discussion, which will be interactive and fun. So let us get this started. I'd like to invite Sanket Sahu, our CEO, on stage to get this event started. Stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Akansha. Hi, everyone. Hello. I see the first row empty. Backbenchers? All right. Welcome to Flutter Fest. We have done Flutter events in the past, but today we have 70 people, so that's really good. And we are really excited how this community is growing. I just take 5 minutes. So, as Akansha said, I'm Sanket. I'm a developer first and also a co-founder here at GeekyAnts. And today, I'm really excited to see you all. I've got few numbers. So Flutter Bangalore today, it's 2,500 people strong. Can we have a clap for that? And we started before pandemic, so including online and offline. This is the 23rd edition of the meetup. So pretty excited to rename Flutter Bangalore today to Flutter Wizards because we are going global. Great. There's a little story how Flutter started here at GeekyAnts and how we started Flutter Bangalore. It was 2017, and me and Atul, one of the co-founders, we had been to a React Native conference in the US. So such an irony. Before going to the React Native conference, which was in Portland, I had sent a message to one of the creators of Flutter. He was Seth Ladd, who used to work on the Chrome team, and that's how Skia came to Flutter. And I was lucky that when I was there for the conference, they had replied to my tweet about like 2 months later. So we were lucky enough to meet them at Google HQ, and we went to pitch them BuilderX, which is a design tool for React Native. We were like, you should use this design tool that codes React Native. So we built BuilderX, a design tool that codes React Native. And we were like, we can do the same thing for Flutter. Why don't you use it or maybe officially promote it across your platforms? But we got pissed back that why are you not using Flutter? Why are you using React Native? And we were like, yes, let's give it a shot. And the rest is history. We came back, we started Flutter Bangalore alongside React Native Bangalore. And we used to do one-on-one like Flutter and React Native at the same time, and used to divide people on left and right, and then used to have some sort of WWE fight. But yeah, over time, both the communities have grown, and now they have their own presence. Today is just Flutter, which is exciting. But we will keep doing Flutter and React Native at the same time because there's so much to learn from each other rather than to fight. So we are working on few of the projects at GeekyAnts here. On top of Flutter, we are building a UI component library. You might have heard of Native Base, which is a UI component library for React Native that we built here. We are porting that to Flutter, which started off as a joke on 1st April, but now we are seriously building Native Base for Flutter. So that's one of the things. And we have Flutter Starter that we are building. That's a starter kit for Flutter. So usually you need a state management, you need some sort of API service, and maybe GraphQL, and maybe routing and all those things, which is very fragmented, just like other communities. I know great things are brought from React to Flutter, but the fragmentation is also brought into Flutter as well. We have multiple state management, we have multiple API services and whatnot. So for a newbie, it gets like sometimes, okay, which one to pick and which one not to do. So we have built Flutter Starter. That's a starter kit which gives you the best practices. You can go ahead and use it, which is in its early version right now. We built it like 2 years back. Now we are building the version 2. So keep an eye on that. And yeah, very proud of all of you here to see happy faces and building a strong Flutter community. And beyond Flutter, this is more about Bangalore. Who knows? The next Google happens here, or somebody in this room builds the next Flutter. Who knows that? So yeah, all the best to the speakers and the MC and everyone else in the room. Over to you, Akansha. That's all from my side. Stay kind, stay humble. Talk to the person next to you, and yeah, follow me on Twitter. Thanks.
Thank you, Sanket. Thanks a lot for getting this event started. So I would like to invite Pooja on the stage. A little about Pooja. So she's a senior software developer at Unicards, and she's also a Google developer for Flutter. That's amazing. And she has co-founder of Women Droid community, and also passionate about mentoring folks. So here we are. She's helping us to set up the note for us. Is it? Yeah, just connect it to the laptop. Yeah, not this one, not this one, not this one. Okay.
Hello everyone. Hi, I am Pooja Bhaumik and I will be setting the theme of this Flutter Fest and giving the keynote address. A little about me if you do not know. So, hi, I am Pooja Bhaumik. I'm currently working in the mobile team for Unicards. And a little about me, why I'm here. Like, I write technical blogs. So, the first blog that I had written, which was around in 2018, it kind of today.
Just need to check the history. This is shared with
Oh, okay.
the history. Share the tab. Sure.
Should I repeat it again?
Yeah, you can go on there.
Repeat it again?
Yeah.
So sorry, I have to repeat that again. So hi, I'm Pooja Bhaumik. I am I work in the mobile team for Unicards, and the reason why I'm here is because of the work that I do for the community, which is I write technical blogs. Which one of the first articles that I had written was the complex JSON parsing, which today has like 450K, and in total, articles have like around 1.5 million views and around 250K reads. I also create YouTube content. It's paused, but I have been doing that. And it's mostly on Flutter, mobile development, building a personal brand, etc. So definitely check that out. And I also recently launched my LinkedIn Learning course. So if anyone here is a very newbie in Flutter, you can definitely check that course out. It's basically to get started in Flutter. And today it has around 2,300 learners. Around 2 months back, I launched it. And I also do these stressful activities like delivering talks and workshops in front of people, where GeekyAnts was also one of the meetups that I had done in 2019, Dev Fest, also international conferences like NDC Sydney, Flutter Vikings, and next week I have DroidCon Singapore. So basically, that's the entire thing about me. But you're not here to listen about me, right? So you want to know about what's happening in Flutter. What's the hot news? What's the interesting news about Flutter? So since this is a Flutter Fest, let's just talk about what's happening in the last 1 month kind of thing. Well, 1 month back, Flutter 3.3 got launched. However, 4 or 5 days back, 3.34 got launched. And if you are a seasoned developer, you will know that that's the actual stable version. So, and one of the news about the 3.3 launch was the Impeller, which is the new graphics engine that Flutter has been working on for a very long time. It is kind of going to be replacing the previous Skia code with custom runtime. It is going to be making a heavy use of Metal from iOS, Vulkan from Android, and it's promising, silky smooth animations and maybe performance that is jank free. So today they actually do have this app Wondrous on iOS that is actually using Impeller, maybe not the Android one, but the iOS version is today using the Impeller one. So definitely check it out, download it and see how amazingly silky smooth the animations are. And also the project, if you're really interested to know great architecture, good architecture in a way, definitely check out the open source code of Wondrous to actually see the best practices. So Wondrous is an amazing app for seeing the animations and seeing the best practices. So definitely check that out. And do we have a new state management solution in the market? No, or at least I don't know. At least I'm not aware, because even if it is, I have lost track. We do have 2.0 of we have 2.0 of Riverpod here, which is, I think, going to be very interesting because it does have improvements on the performance and the lifecycle events. And there is also a talk about the dev tools for Riverpod. So I'm very excited to try that out. So if you do have Riverpod in your project, definitely migrate to 2.0 to try it out. And other than that, anyone who is a package maintainer. Right. So there is good news for your package maintainers that GitHub has shown support for supply chain security, which means that you can now use GitHub Security Advisory, which kind of lets you privately fix vulnerabilities without publishing it to the public yet. Also, it gives you support for dependency graph, which is the backbone of Dependabot alerts, which alerts you if you have a vulnerability in your dependency, it will create a pull request for fixing the affected dependency. It's pretty great now that GitHub has complete support for the open source packages today. And finally, Hacktoberfest is here because this is October, and Flutter community has its own Hacktoberfest going on, which is by Invertase, where you can actually fix the issues of the Flutter community plugins, which is the Plus plugins, etc. And you will definitely get a lot of goodies out of it, which can be one of them could be a dash for few of the issues that you resolve, but there are other goodies as well. So definitely go into the Invitace Flutter Hacktober Fest website and check out, log in and check out all the issues that is part of the Flutter community plugin, and go on and fix issues in October and beyond it as well. So now we want to talk about the code of conduct. So basically, be respectful to each other. Do not use any hate speech. I know you would not, right? You're such a sweet audience after all. But keep it light. And this is going to be a space for growth and learning. So definitely, get all the information out of and network with people, learn about each other, and we also want to talk about the agenda of today because we have some amazing talks by amazing folks here. First off, we will have Vivek Yadav talking about how to bring animated experiences in your Flutter apps. Next, we have Sunny Prasad, who will tell you how to integrate Flutter to your existing native apps, which is definitely important for a lot of existing applications today. And then we have Sri Bhagwat, who's going to talk about the behind the scenes of the Flutter rendering engine. Very important. And then we also have Gaurav, Bhatnagar and Satish Kumar talking about the effective state management in Flutter using Riverpod. Is it 2.0? I don't know. So definitely, let's hear it. And at the end, I will also be taking an interactive session on if you want to know more about how to stand out in the Flutter hiring market, how to have a great profile that attracts recruiters in a way. We will be having a Q&A, so keep your questions ready for that end of it. And at the end, we will also have a panel discussion with some of our speakers. So shall we have the show begin right now? Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you for the great interactive section. So I'd like to invite Vivek Yadav now on the stage. A quick introduction about him. He's from Zest Money, working as a mobile team lead there, and also a Go developer for Flutter and Dart. And he loves to mentor others, and also the community organizer of Flutter Mumbai and Flutter India. He's now going to talk about how to deal with the Flutter animations and how to solve the complex animation problems which you all face. And also, he's going to tell about the different options available in Flutter for animations. Let's welcome Vivek Yadav on the stage.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. So let's wait for a few seconds. Yeah. Cool. So let's bring animated experience to your Flutter app. Okay. Before that, I want to know who have not tried Flutter yet. So basically, you are completely beginner for Flutter. Okay, cool. And who do not know what animation is? Complete zero. Is there anyone? Okay, cool. So yeah. So this is me, Vivek Yadav. I am mobile team lead at Zestmoney, also Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart. Along with that, I try to become mentor. I try to create content on YouTube and different platforms. And yeah, I just have 5 years of experience. Cool. So let's begin. So this is something which is rotating. Okay. Can you see it rotating? Okay. Now one are rotate to. So it rotated, right? Okay. So that's where animation comes into play. So animation is nothing but photographic successive events of some images, okay, which lets you think that there is a movement, and that what animation is. So basically, if I move directly from there to there, okay, like some superhero, then it is not an animation for you, okay. But if I walk like that, okay, so your eyes are actually capturing the image in a very maybe 16 millisecond for mobile, so you have some more great frame. So yeah, so with the successive image going continuously, okay, in front of you, so you think that that is an animation, okay, but behind the scene it is nothing but an image is going on, okay, cool. So you didn't like this, okay, let me pick this. So what about this? ये इंट्रोडक्शन अच्छा है अभी, लेकिन यहाँ पे कुछ मिसिंग, cool, या लाइक दिस, ठीक है. सो वी कैन सी कि कुछ एनिमेशन हो रहा है, टेक्स्ट आ रहा है यहाँ से, इमेजेस नीचे से ऊपर आ रहे हैं, ठीक है. सो दिस इज एनिमेशन, ओके. बिहाइंड द सीन it is nothing but in 16 millisecond the image is updating itself, okay, and because it is around 60 times it is happening in 1 second, so we think that it is an animation, okay. So I guess the concept is clear, okay. So it is not a video, it is just a frames, okay. So while coding we have to keep that thing in mind, okay. So let's move. Yeah. Yeah, this is my code that Flutter is the best platform to build applications for iPhones and Android phones. I'm not talking about other things. Okay. Cool. So let's talk about animation. That now that we know what is animation, okay, and let's see what different things do we have for animation in Flutter. Okay. The first thing is what I say, very simple animation. Okay, which Flutter gives you, for which Flutter gives you a lot of widgets. Okay. Okay. So widgets basically Flutter gives inbuilt things for you and let you do your animation. For example, here. Okay. I clicked on that. It is animating, right? It is animation, okay. And for this I have written roughly 5 to 10 lines, okay. And most of them are making this particular architecture here, right, making this round and giving shapes. And if okay, I'll show the code later, okay. And this simple animation is known as implicit animation, okay. Why I'm exposing this as an implicit? Because while selecting an animation, okay, basically while doing coding you have to select, right, which animation is best for you, okay. So remember, if you have very simple animation, go for an implicit animation, okay. We'll cover more on that. And yeah, let's see. So now it is rotating, yeah. Also it is increasing it in size, okay. One more thing is happening, can anyone note that? Sorry?
Rotation speed.
Okay, rotation speed. Okay, have anyone noted background color? Okay, let me play it again. Oops, not early. Yeah, yeah. So now it is some creamy color, okay, and gradually it becomes green color. Okay. Now focus on the background color only. Okay. The color is animating. And now with the definition of animation, we know that color is just changing its value. Okay. With 16 millisecond. That is it. Right. So we all know that what is animation. Okay. We all know what is implicit animation. Okay. Now let's talk about this screen. Okay. Where multiple animations are going on. Okay. That means we need a little complex animation tool, right? That's where explicit animation comes into play. Okay. So implicit is where you have very simple animation. Okay. For example, you have to increase a widget, you have to rotate a widget. Okay. You have to change a color. So for single thing, simple things, you go for implicit. For complex thing, for multiple things happening at a time, you go for a explicit animation. Okay. So yeah, let me show you an image. Not this, not this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this image is really useful if you are building an animation in Flutter. Okay, so basically it asks you a question: do you want animation? If you're saying no, okay, do nothing. But if you want an animation, okay, then do you have something like drawing, or do you just need simple text? Okay, if you need a simple text, go here. Okay, if you want to animate a textile, okay, then you have something like this animated default textile. Okay, then if you want to do something else, okay, then you can go deeper. Okay, and then you can find something else. And all of these are already provided into Flutter. Okay, so using this particular chart, okay, if you're beginning, you have to use this chart. Okay, once you're experienced with that, you don't have to refer it. So yeah, in beginning you have to refer this, okay, so that it can help you to choose right animating tool from Flutter. Okay, so yeah, I want to go back here. Look at this. For custom painters, use explicit animations. And we use custom painters when we want to build a complex UI or a complex animation. Okay. So two things. One is the implicit, one is the explicit. Okay. And you know when and how to use, not how, but yeah, when and where to use that. Okay. Then there is something like this. Okay. So now it is asking you some question. Okay, based on yes and no. Okay, you get some options. But yeah, notice this. Lottie, if you're a designer or have worked with designer, you will know about Lottie. Okay, so Lottie is a drawing animation. So basically, animation is giving to you. You don't have to build it. You just have to run it. Okay, so yeah, that's what Lottie is. So animation in a nutshell, okay, supports a lot of things in Flutter. Okay, from a simple animation to very complex animation and to a drawing based animation, which is not, which is kind of running in Flutter. That is it. This kind of some sequence or some GIF, or you can tell, or JSON is running. Okay, that's what Lottie is. Okay, till now, any questions? Any question? Okay. Cool. Then okay. So till now that we know what is implicit, what is explicit, how to use this. Okay. Until when to use it. Okay. So also okay. So let me show you something here. Okay. So all of this code which were happening, before this, okay, before this script, all codes were written in Flutter. Okay, everything was just a Dart code. Okay, but now can you see this confetti? So this is a drawing based animation which is very complex. Okay, so what I did, I asked my designer to give me a Lottie file, and I used it in my app. Okay, so it's simple. You have a lot of options to go with. Okay, and now it is well, it is not yet completed. Now I have to show you something. Okay, so what do you guys think of this presentation? Is it good, bad, or average? Okay, I call it average. Okay, okay, and this is built in Flutter. The whole thing is built in Flutter. So you can see I'm running a Flutter web project. Okay, which is doing all these things, this left right animation, this confetti, the whole thing. So I wanted to try how far I can go with Flutter animation. Can I build something like presentation or slide? And yes, I was able to. Okay, and okay, so okay, are you guys interested in seeing code? Really? Okay, how much time do I have? 10 minutes? Okay, I think I have a lot of time. Okay, so cool. So I'll show you some code. Okay, first we'll see the implicit animation code. Okay, so here, okay, so this code, this is code for implicit animation. Okay, where you're saying that this is my duration. Okay, and then you have selected an animated container. Okay, so for implicit we have all the widgets present in Flutter. Okay, that's why animated container comes into play. And now can you see two variables, height and width? Right? And if you remember that box, it was increasing in size, basically height and width, and it was decreasing, right? So yeah, and yeah, and before that, let me also show you some code. This one. So if it is a forward, increase it, otherwise decrease it. That is it. So this is very simple implicit animation where you update the values. That is it. You don't do anything. You just update the values, and Flutter widget will take care of all the animation. Okay. So here I'm just saying, okay, now increase my height to 200, and then set state, right? And this animated container will take care of everything. Okay, so that was implicit animation, which is very simple animation. And similarly, animated container, we have a lot of widgets here. No, not this. Yeah. So you have lots of widget, okay, present here. Okay. So based on your requirement, you can use it. Okay. So that was about the implicit. Let's talk about explicit. So if I'm not wrong, it is here. Yeah. So in explicit animation, okay, now game changes. You have a lot of things to do, okay, but how to control them, right? So to control them, you have three things. One is the sticker provided state mixing, okay, and then animation controller, and then animation. Okay, this sticker provider, can you see the word tick? Okay. So the sticker is nothing but a tick tock. It gives you a clock, okay, with 16 millisecond, or you can increase it as well. Okay, so it gives you a clock, okay, and it asks you, okay, that when you want to update your screen, okay, so it gives you the timer, you can say, then animation controller. So animation controller, as name states, it will control your animation, okay, just like remote controller. Okay, and then animation. So animation will tell you how your animation will look like. Animation controller will control, you want to go forward, backward, start, stop, and ticket provider will give you a clock. Is it clear? Cool. So I guess things are then pretty simple. You have to initialize these variables, okay, and then use it. Okay. So I'll just show you a very simple thing. Okay. So can you see a controller, animation controller? So I've initiated that with a time which is millisecond, 20,000. So that is 20 seconds. And then logo twin. So this is an animation. So you can see logo twin. It is animation. Logo control is the animation controller. Okay, I've initialized these two things. Okay, and yeah, cool. So you can see I'm controlling the animation using controller. Okay, forward, backward, start, stop, whatever you want. Okay, and then okay. So in implicit animation, we were playing with variables, right? Height and width. Here, the things are same. You have to play with your values, okay? And this animation, which was logo twin, it will give you a value, okay? So basically, after a few time, the ticker time, okay, it will give you the updated value, okay? So now imagine the height, okay? It starts from 100, okay? It will go to 101, 2, 3, 4, and based on your animation scheme, it might go 10, 20, and 100 or 200, okay? So it gives you values, okay, you use set state to update your screen. That is it. Is that simple. Okay, any question till now or any confusion? Yeah, so you can see this is animated builder. I have used this animation directly, but yeah, you have to play on your values. Okay, cool. Okay, any other question in animation? Because I guess, yeah. Okay, I have time. Just 2 minutes, no? Okay. So there's one more thing which is very important. Okay, when you start working with animation, okay, there is something known as animation choreography. If I'm not wrong, yeah, animation choreography. So you know choreography, right? Dance choreography. Okay. So there are some steps a dancer does, okay, based on the choreography. Similarly, animation choreography helps you to do animation based on the steps. For example, here this confetti, right? So you can see it has some kind of choreography. It will go up, spread its hand, and then comes down. Okay, things will repeat. Cool. So that was about animation, and I know it gone very fast. Okay. So if you have any question or something else, I'm around. Connect with me. And also, so these are my links where you can connect with, And one more thing, that if you want downloads, yeah. So this is the QR code which will take you to a document with all the links to implicit, explicit, and that flow chart and few more information. Okay, cool. Thank you. Should I take it off? Cool. Thanks.
Thank you, Vivek. That was a great interactive session. Never really knew that Flutter animations can work from this perspective. I never saw this explanation before. So, for people who want to click pictures and post all this happening, can click pictures from the frame right outside, and you can tag us GeekyAnts and also tag Flutter BLR with the hashtag FlutterFest. Okay. All right. Cool. Moving forward with our next tech talk. So here we have Sunny Prasad, who is going to talk about how to migrate the existing native apps to Flutter application. So also by ensuring that existing users won't be interrupted and also maintaining the code quality, which is important. So a quick introduction about Sunny Prasad. He's also I think he's also coming from the Zest Money, working as a Flutter developer there, and also a community organizer of Flutter Ahmedabad. And he claims that he's an open source contributor. So let's welcome Sunny Prasad on the stage.
Is it working? Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you, Akanksha. And it feels good to be on this stage. I would like to take this time to first of all thank GeekyAnts to build this amazing stock lineup. And I know for sure that all these topics about state management, about optimization, about how to use Flutter uh, and animations. So everything will be very useful for people at every level, either you're a student or a seasoned developer. Things you'll find something new, or maybe you have learned something. So let me start with a question. So, have you tried creating animations with Android toolkit or iOS? And only a few. So, how was it? And have you tried with Flutter? So yeah, you got the point. And so coming back to integrating Flutter into native, have you got the chance to do this, probably just to try it out or at your work? I know one person, and hasn't Gaurav tried? Yeah. So Gaurav is from Musk, and they have a crazy story about how they moved to Flutter. You can listen to that from him. So when you will want to need you will want to use Flutter and into native. So for example, you have a product that is already built using native, probably Android or iOS, and you want to use capabilities of Flutter to build something like a very cool animation that is probably a little bit hard with your native toolkit, or you want to build whole features, and you want to build that using Flutter for the obvious reasons of cost and time benefits that it gives, and developer experience is something that we all know about. So this is possible with the feature called Add to App. It is called Add to App, and It provides you full access to Flutter SDK. You can share all the logic between native and Flutter. There is no compromise in performance. It runs as fast as native, and it will run as fast as a Flutter app. All the debugging tools are available to you, and all the pub.dev packages are also there. So you wonder how it works. If you're a native dev, if you have tried native, uh, you want to know how it all connects. So the thing is that Flutter provides you on Android a Flutter activity, and on iOS Flutter View Controller. So these things can host Flutter engine in it, and on Flutter engine you can run your Flutter code, any Dart code. So that is how it works, and we'll see how to actually do it, the process. So first is you create a module style project, and then you integrate, and we'll see the first one, creation. So for creation you have all the familiar options. You can either try to create a Flutter module project using Flutter create command. Just select the type module, and the same goes for Android Studio. You can select the project type as module, and you'll get a project which is created from a module template. But make sure that your Flutter module sits at sibling level to your other native projects, like your Flutter, like your Android or iOS app. So we'll see how to integrate into Android. You have the module, you have written some code inside it, now you want to integrate it. So there are two options for Android. First is building an AR out of your Flutter module, and then what is AR? AR is Android Archive. It is a library format, or say similar to a package, but for native Android. So to build an AR, we have a command in Flutter called Flutter build AR, and it will build the required files, and it will also give you the steps that you have to follow to get this implemented in your native project. You can simply follow this, and it will be done. Second is source integration. This is a one-step process. You only have to change two files, settings.gradle and build.gradle. And once that is done, whenever you run your native project, it will first of all build your Flutter module and then integrate that into your Android project and run it. And for iOS, we also have, for iOS also we have two options. First is the popular one, Cocoa Pods, and second is frameworks. So for Cocoa Pods, you only have to modify pod file. There are earlier there were only 2 lines to modify. Now it is 4 after introduction of Apple Silicon, and you then run pod install, and it will do the needful to integrate the module and to your project. Second way is to build frameworks. So Flutter module can be built as a framework, and then it can be integrated into your iOS project the way you do. So to build a framework out of your Flutter module, you have a command, Flutter build iOS framework, and it will output the required files, and then you link it inside your Xcode, and then you embed it. Embedding means that the needed files will be compiled when you are trying to publish or run the project. So the files will be embedded inside the final target, and then you can then it can run on simulator or devices. So we have completed the integration and also creation. Now how to invoke it, how to actually open the Flutter view when something happens. So on Android, it is very similar to how you build an activity and launch it. So here you can create a Flutter activity with a new engine, and then build it and start the activity. Same goes for an iOS side, very familiar. You can use Flutter view controller that is provided, which can host a Flutter engine, and then you present the view controller. So these are very familiar to any native developers. So that's integration. And when you are actually developing, you need the Flutter tools like debugger, like ID support, like inspection. So you can do that by using Flutter attach. So all the supported IDs support this command called flutter attach. In VS Code, it is called attach to a Dart process, and it will connect to the running app, and it will let you use all the tools that you have with any Flutter app, like debugging support in the IDE. You can run this dev tools and do inspection, like I've shown here. Then this is the whole circle. Now, when you actually start doing it, you may face a few problems, challenges, and I want to show 3 of them. First is integrating multiple modules. So Flutter Add to App does not support having multiple modules. For example, if you want to build 2 features, 2 teams are building separate features, and then you want both of those features inside your native app. So that is not possible by default, but there is a workaround. So the workaround is you build one module and then integrate other Flutter modules inside your PubSpec YAML, so that you can only build one common module and integrate it the way we have just shown. So it's that simple, and it would work normally. Second issue that you may face is that whenever you are trying to open the Flutter view, it will take some time, and that is because Flutter engine needs some time to warm up, and that takes 1 to 3 seconds, and your users may not like it. So there is a solution here again. So this is a sample of it taking some time, and the solution is to use something called Flutter Engine Cache. This engine cache lets you pre-warm an engine, prepare an engine and then put it in the cache, and whenever you need it, you can just use it, pull it from the cache and then run it, and the result is very fast launch, as you can see. Yeah. Next is reusing existing code. So you may have written a lot of code, like getting refresh token, sending analytics, getting remote config, and anything else. But when you are trying to build a feature in Flutter, you will want those things in Flutter also. So you do not want to write everything again, integrate whole Flutter what do you call it, Firebase analytics again, or refresh token logic. No. So what you can do, you can invoke method channels from Flutter, and then you can handle them inside your native apps. And what it will do, it will whenever a method is invoked, it will check the parameters, if any or anything, and it will process it. You can run your native code and send the result back or not. It's your choice. Here is an example. So we have created a method channel and invoked a few events, few methods. Second one contains some arguments also. And on native side, this is an example of Kotlin. So here also you can create a channel and then listen to all the invocations that are happening and handle them. And here you can run your native code. And you can also send back the results. For example, send back the refreshed token. So other challenges, there are many things that you would want to adjust, like CI/CD workflows. If you have existing ones, you'll have to adopt this new process. Manage versioning. You can use Git tags or publish the AR or frameworks. And another challenge is finding out issues. So when something happens on production, you'll have to find out what happened. So for that, you can integrate Firebase Crashlytics plugin in Flutter module also, and also in native. It can live together. There are process, and you can also use method channels to send logs for the important events and see what happened when it happened. So this was the short process of how you do it. And okay, let me summarize. So all the references available on this website, development/add to app on docs. And first step was creation. You can create a Flutter module using Terminal or Android Studio. Just make sure that your project is at sibling level. Second is integration. You can integrate using on Android and on iOS. You have two two options on both. On Android, you have AR or source integration. On iOS, you have Cocoa pods or frameworks. While invoking, you can use method channels. So you can use a Flutter activity or Flutter view controller. And when debugging, all the IDs have features to attach to the running Flutter instance. And we saw a few challenges like app getting slow or reusing the code. So I hope that okay. So I hope that if you are in a company where you have an app built in native and you want to use the benefits of Flutter, probably build a feature or a single screen using Flutter, you will be able to do it. And if you are if you do not have a use case now, probably in future when you have to, you'll not need to start from a fresh. You'll have some context. So thank you for listening. And if there are any questions, yes.
Is this only to migrate? Like I have a native app built, so add to app is only for migrating or adding only one particular feature.
You can use it in the way you want. So thank you for the question. This was a good one. So you can use this to keep only some features built in Flutter, or you can what you can do, you can plan your whole migration using it. For example, you have n number of features and you have thought that let's migrate these few features first and then integrate into your app, and then open those features, open those changes via remote config flag to only a few users, and test it how it works. If it is going good, you gradually migrate all your features into Flutter, and then there will be a one day when you can completely move to your Flutter code base. So you can use it the way you want.
Like in the end, we need to rewrite the code, native code into Flutter.
No, it's your choice. If you want to do migration, you can do step by step, phase by phase, or you can choose to not do migration but use the benefits of Flutter, probably building a very complex animation or a workflow like that. Yeah.
Just one follow-up.
Yeah.
Then after integration, what commands we use? Native commands or Flutter commands?
So we saw a few examples here. So on native also you have multiple options for Android and multiple options for iOS. So depends on what you choose. If you choose to build AR all the time, then you will have to run Flutter build AR and integrate into your workflows. And if not, then if you've chosen source integration, then it is one step process. Once you change it, you can press run button in your Android Studio and it will do a compilation of your Flutter module also and your Android project, and then run it.
How about navigation? Is it like, do you recommend sharing it, or or maybe just give that control to Flutter once the users enter the Flutter world?
So you saw that it is using Flutter activity, right? So as soon as you start the Flutter activity, your Android navigation ends. After that, you can use Flutter's navigation capabilities and manage routing there.
So, with the coming of iOS 13, right? So they have introduced something called scene delegate. Right?
What do you call it?
Scene delegate.
Scene delegate.
Earlier
Okay.
in native iOS we used to have app delegate, but now they have introduced also scene delegate. So if you have seen in the newer iPad applications or newer version, so we can uh, run multiple instances of the same application at the same time. So if you try to integrate this Flutter script, like they will be compatible. The two instances running of a native application.
Okay, running multiple instances of Flutter. I mean, probably you have created something with Flutter and then want to use that feature.
In the iOS, like the app is on iOS,
Hmm.
we can run multiple instances
Hmm.
in the same device at the same time.
Yeah. So
This will be compatible with that.
I'll try to answer this. I do not have knowledge of this new feature that came in. But what I can say is, because iOS is providing this capability, whether you have an existing app built entirely using Flutter, I think you can still go inside the iOS side of it. You can open the iOS folder in your Xcode and integrate this new feature, support this new feature, and it should run normally. And in our case, if you have integrated only some part, I mean, if you have built only some part using Flutter, then I don't think there will be any difference, because it is a package for us, Cocoa Pods or a framework, and it will become at the end your part of your application itself. So Flutter does not have to manage anything or affect anything. iOS will handle when to open, how to open, and how to isolate two apps or two instances of engine, for example. So I think that it should work normally. But you'll check. You'll have to check.
That's a topic of business now.
Thank you. And my Twitter handle is this. You can reach out to me if you have any questions around integration. And there are many details that I had to omit for simplicity of understanding. But if you have any specific use case and just want to ask a question, feel free to contact me or look at the docs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunny Prasad. Thank you for sharing your great ideas with us on how to migrate the existing native apps to Flutter. Now, I'll be sharing this QR code with you all, guys. Those who people have questions for the panel discussion can post your questions through this QR code. Scan this QR code to post your questions for the panel discussion. And actually, I was amazed by how Vivek Yadav gave his entire presentation by building a Flutter project. I'm actually wanting to have a look at the GitHub link of the project. I'll be wanting that. Is anyone with me who is also wanting to have a look at the project? Oh, we have many. Okay, I think he'll be glad to share it with all of you guys. So yeah, I think it's time for a short break. So we'll be back in 15 minutes. We have arranged some refreshments for you guys. I'm off to grab my coffee. See you all in 15 minutes. Thank you. I'll keep the QR code here. Here is the QR code for all of you to post your queries, be it small or big. Come on, it's just a panel discussion, and we are here to discuss and share all our knowledge. So please go ahead and please share all your queries through this QR code. Um, And yes, we have received a QR code from Vivek. This is the QR code from Vivek in which he shares his repo. So I'll make the screen still for 30 seconds. You all can scan. Yeah, I hope everyone is back, energized. If not, don't worry, Sri Bhagwat is there to make us all. I'm super excited to hear his talk about how does Flutter handle to render the application in the front end. So how does the Flutter engine works behind the scenes? So let us hear it from Sri Bhagwat. A quick introduction for him. So he's a co-founder and CEO of Kodami, and also the Flutter consultant at Abacus, and also the Flutter corporate training. So please, Sri Bhagwat, the stage is all yours.
We had a nice break and we all enjoyed our snacks and refreshments. And I hope you all guys are refreshed and energetic for my talk. Of course, we had a great line of talk and great speakers with us in our GeekyAnts Flutter Fest 2022. And I'm really thankful for GeekyAnts to giving me this opportunity to be one of the speakers in such a great line of speakers. And my today's topic, as you all know, is Flutter render engine behind the scenes. So we all are Flutter developers, of course we all are, and we all like to develop good qualities and nice applications in Flutter, which we use a single code base to render our application on web, mobile. Okay, right now let's target these two factors over here, and in mobile, let's say Android iOS. So here we have been rendering our Flutter applications from day one, and it's really cool. It's really awesome. It's fast, but then how Flutter actually does this? How Flutter actually renders this application on the screen? This is my topic for the day, and I will guide you. Frankly, this is an advanced topic, and I've tried my level best to reduce the theory part and to make it easier to fit this topic in a 20 minutes time slot given by GeekyAnts to me. So thankful for that. And before moving on, where is my cursor? Yeah. And thanks, Akansha, for this wonderful introduction that you gave about me. So again, I will start. So my name is Shri Bhagwat, and I'm a founder of Kodami, which is a client-based app development company. Apart from that, I'm also an organizer for Flutter Pune, and I'm a lead mentor and video course creator at raywindalik.com. Ray Windalik is the company which has Flutter Apprentice book, if you guys don't know, which was endorsed by Google itself. So I was one of the TEs in there. So we create books and video courses for different mobile tech companies and mobile courses that we have. Apart from that, I'm also PM and Flutter team lead at Abacus.co, which is an Australian POS company. And in my free time, I try my best to devote to community and create YouTube videos and be a public speaker at events like this, and also provide corporate Flutter trainings and other app development trainings. And on the right side, you can see I have my social shares, Shri Bhagwat 94 on Twitter and everywhere else. And my YouTube channel is Kodami. You can please subscribe because I need them. And special thanks to GeekyAnts for arranging such an awesome event. The food was great, the speakers are even better, and the arrangement is completely good. So, without taking much time, let me start with my topic. My today's topic again is how Flutter renders the app, and just a basic example of the image that I felt is apt for this topic over here. Now, I will break this talk into 4 theories over here that we have. So, the theory of everything is the special book of Stephen Hawking, and I have read that book. I like that book, so I gave the title over here. And I'm breaking that into 4 theories. So, the first theory is the layout phase, second is the painting phase, third is the composition phase, and the fourth is the rasterizing phase. So, these are the 4 phases, and we will break down. If you don't understand, it's fine. When I be breaking down these theories, it would be easier, and at the end we'll also be having a Q&A session, so I'm always there to explain you and guide you in this. Here is a small diagram, not small, complicated one, my bad. So here is a complicated diagram where Flutter tells us how we render everything on the screen, and on the top we see we have 3 trees, a widget tree, element tree, and render object tree. On the extreme right, we also have the UI which says Flutter activity. Inside that we have a window, then we have a Flutter view, and we also have the Flutter surface view. And inside the surface view, we have widget, widget, widget. So that's the UI that you actually see on the screen. On the left hand side, we have the rendering pipeline. Now, what is a pipeline? When things follow one after each other into a set is called a pipeline. So the rendering pipeline helps us to see how the Flutter renders the application one after each other into a stream, or say into a pipeline, giving us the final result onto a screen. And then we have the GPU and we have the raster compositions. This is just a basic example. Now let's go deep into it. So the first phase which I have talked about, it is the layout phase. Now, what is layout? Like, you might have heard this layout word. Let's forget Flutter. Let's come to English part. You might have heard this layout keyword or layout word multiple times in your day-to-day life. Like how you are laying things. That is called as layout. Are you guys with me? Right? Yeah. So when you lay out things on the screen or anywhere, that is called as the layout phase. So what happens in layout? So for example, when GeekyAnts decided to create an event over here, they first thought how we will lay out this space. Okay, so here will be the stage, here will be the screens, we will have the chairs aligned like this, here will be the mic, the camera, everything. So they decided a place and the size of each and everything over here, right? So that's what Flutter does. When we create widgets, Flutter first layouts the space for each and every widget. So in the entire screen, where each widget will go, the size and the constraints that are laid out beforehand. So the parent child passes down the constraints. Constraint is the maximum space. So who has arranged this, they will say, okay, the stage should be of 3 feet, not more than that. And in width, it should be of 8 feet, not more than that. And then they have given the speaker the camera of 3 feet. So no matter the stage is so big, but me over here, I just have the option to move from this side to this side. So this is the parent child, this is the parent widget, and I'm the child widget of this parent stage. So I gave another sizes to my parent widget, which told the parent widget that, okay, we have this much space available, but this child can move only from this side to this side. So now my remaining space can be utilized for some other widgets, or let's say for some other layouts. This is how layouts work. In single sentence, let's say constraint come down from parent to child and sizes go up from child to parent. Understood? Constraints नीचे आते हैं, size ऊपर जाता है. Simple. ठीक है? Yeah? Yeah. And then the painting phase, we go to the painting phase, and this is the world famous painting. We all know that we have been seeing a lot over here.
Welcome.
Yes, this painting is very famous, and that's how Flutter renders. You can see, so Flutter provides Flutter provides a canvas to the widgets, and on that widget, on the canvas, the widget can draw itself. Okay, so each widget has its own canvas, And what provides that canvas? The painting phase provides the canvas to the widget which can paint separately. Okay, so each widget has its own canvas. Okay, each widget has its own canvas, and also each widget can lay out a canvas to its child to create its own painting. Got it? So let's say there is that left hand side small cluster of paint that will be painted separately. The horse and the donkey will be painted separately, and that's how everything is created. And every widget creates a new layer, and that is painted on top of each other. I hope clear till here, right? And then we come into a composition phase. So here's another example. We all like to listen music, right? If you break down the music, we have the vocalist, then we also have players who are playing guitar at the background, then we have a drummer, and then we have multiple sounds that we need. We also have folky sounds that are the basic minor sounds, and then everything, a composer collects all those sounds and he mixes and merges them together to create a music and to create a song out of it, right? So each and every component is separate, but when we listen to them, it feels like it is running in a harmony, right? So this is what is happening over here. Flutter also takes the separate widget separately, arranges them with according to the layout phase, which we have given them the sizes and everything, and then it creates a great cluster together, joining them one after each other how we need it. So where you can see, I have given an image of a Lego. Why? Because we can actually join, we can actually say each widget kind of a block of a Lego, and then we can just align it how we want or lay out it how we want, right? And after that, after the composition phase, we fall off into the rasterizing phase. And now what rasterizing phase does is it creates a raster image of the compositions. So whatever compositions we had, it created a raster image, and then that raster image is sent to our Flutter engine. Then Flutter engine, what it does, it submits that to the GPU, and then the GPU renders that in front of your screen. And that rendering part is usually done by 60 Hertz per second, right? And it is done in pixels. So each pixel knows what it has to print or what it has to render, and that everything is handled by the GPU part. Now, what actually Flutter renders? This is the main question, like what Flutter renders on screen? Any guesses, any answers? Widgets. Why? Because everything is a widget. Guys, I tackled that. Everything is a widget in Flutter. So Flutter renders widgets on screen. Before going deep, let me just brush you up how actually Flutter renders the widget. So what is a widget? A widget is an immutable description of part of a UI. And when I actually was preparing for this talk and when I read this, it's immutable, and I was like, nahi, mere ko nahi lagta. Why? Because when I'm using the application, the UI is constantly changing. The widget, they're constantly changing. Then how I can say they are immutable? But if you see, it says, the annotation is saying at immutable. That means the widget, they don't change. Now here was a bit confusion that I was having, like if the UI is changing, then why widgets are not changing? Okay. So let us see how actually widgets change and how the UI gets updated. Okay. Now Flutter has three trees. There is a widget tree, there is an element tree, and there is render object tree. We all know widget tree, right? We are creating widgets one after the other. We have parent widget, we have child widget. That is the widget tree. Then we also have element trees. So when you create a widget, the element of that widget is created. Okay, that can be used. So we have the widget, then we also have the element of per widget, and then we have render object tree, which renders those widgets on our screen. Okay, so widget tree, element tree, and render object tree. A basic description over here. So what is widget? It describes the configuration of an element. So for example, we have a widget. Let's say it's a container or a text. Then if it's a container, it's a red color container. Now that is the configuration, right? Then if it is text, what text it has, that is the configuration. The sizes, what is its width, what is its height, that is the configuration we have. Then what is element? Now at what point of our life cycle is that widget shown, okay, and its state and its life cycle is managed by that element. So the location where on the screen, at what time, let's say at the start or mid or end of the application, and its size and its life cycle of that widget, that everything is controlled by the element. Okay, just like widget, we have that elementary by that. And then we have render object. Now what render object does is render object handles the size, the layout and the painting. It handles the size, the layout and the painting. And when Flutter draws the UI on the screen, it looks at the render object tree and not at the widget tree. So we might be thinking that the Flutter is looking at the widget tree when it is drawing the widgets. No, it is looking at the render object tree. And this is the diagram which will depict how Flutter looks where 18 plus guys. And let me break it down even simpler. So we have a widget, we have element, and we have render object. I have taken a text widget at extreme left to me. I have taken a text widget, and this text widget will hold the config for a piece of the UI, right? And it has its public API which we access and we communicate with that text widget. Then it goes into the element phase where it creates a text element which denotes our text widget, okay? And it represents an actual piece of UI. It is representing the actual piece of the UI, and it holds the references and manages the trees as well. And then it creates the render object, that is the render text, which actually gets rendered on the screen, and that render object has its size, layout, composition, styling, everything. Okay. Now, too much theory. Let me just break it down a little bit. And when we always start by printing hello world, it is the first thing that we do. So again, over here also I have taken hello world example, and I have not taken any material app. I haven't taken any scaffold, nothing, just plain run app function. And after run app, I have just called a widget that is rich text, and I have passed a text called as hello world, right? And it makes me a hacker man when I create hello world, because that is the starting phase of development. And you can see this is how the right hand side top corner, you can see this is how our hello world is rendered on the screen, as there is no scaffold, there is no styling, just a plain white text hello world. Okay. And what happens when you call run app function? So when you call run app, if you go inside the run app function, we have widgets flutter binding, which ensure that our application is initialized and our widgets have binded perfectly. And after that, we make sure that the widget that we have passed, in our case the text widget that we have passed, it has attached to the root widget. So that is our root widget that would be shown when the application is running. Okay, so that's why I've highlighted schedule attach root widget, and we are passing the widget from the parenthesis or from the parameters of our function. Again, a basic example over here. What happens is, the new word that you have seen here is leaf render object widget. Now, what is a tree and what is a leaf? So tree is the complete structure, and when we reach at the end part of the tree, we have leaves, right? Root से शुरू होता है, leaves पे खत्म होता है, बराबर? Biology simple. यहाँ तक तो हो ना मेरे साथ? Yeah. So it starts with root and ends at leaf. So when it is your final widget that is rendering, it will have leaf render object element. If it is the final widget. Right now we just have a text widget, which is the final widget. That's why it took leaf render object element. Okay. When we are creating this leaf render object element, you can see over here it calls a create element function. Okay, it is calling an create element function which helps us to create that element. which actually helps us to create that element. And then when the element is created, it mounts that element and then it creates the render object for that element. So that render object will help you to render that widget on that screen at that location with that composition. Got it? Basic? Okay. So what we'll do is, how UI actually changes, we will call run app function twice. I know like some people will be thinking how we can call run app function twice. Even I was confused, but yes, we can actually call run app function twice inside our void main function. And when we call a run app function twice, what happens is that it acts like a set state function that is called into our stateful widget. So basically, it just re-renders the widget, but while re-rendering it, it makes sure to reuse the elements and the objects that we already have rendered before and just change the element or the widget which is changing. So the rest of the application remains same, only the thing that is different will change and only that part will re-render. Okay, so here first we have a rich text which says hello world in our void main function. Then again I called a run app function which has hello Bengaluru, and on the screen it is printing hello Bengaluru. Now there is no GIF or anything which will actually explain you how this works, but then first the hello world is printed, then the hello Bengaluru is printed, but it is so fast that you can't see the difference because both the functions are called one after another immediately. But here is what happens. When you call run app function twice, it first calls a function called as scan update, which returns a bool value. You can see static bool. The bool is the return type, right? Basic function, and it takes two widgets in its parameters: the old widget and the new widget. Old widget matlab purana widget which was present already, and new widget which is the new widget which will change it or which will takes its place. And you can see if the runtime type of both the widget is same, then it will just update the widget. It won't re-render the widget. Okay, but and we are not using keys over here, so let's ignore the key part. But if the runtime type of the widget is different, then it will re-render the widget. It won't update it. Yahan tak samjha? Next slide. Okay, so here is the final explanation of what happens. We have the widget tree, again we have the element tree, we have the render object tree. So first we have rich text which says hello world, right? It is the final widget, that's why we have leaf render object element. Why? Because it is the final widget, so leaf at the end part. And then the render object creates the render paragraph which will render hello world. Then we called the run app function again, and that time we passed hello Bengaluru over there. So our can update function was called, which checked if the new widget and old widget are matching the runtime type. It was true. That's why only the text changed, the text replaced. So the rich text is same. From hello world it went to hello Bengaluru, and from render paragraph hello world it again went to hello Bengaluru. So you can see if we have the final widget, we use leaf render object element, and at the bottom I have also written called as single child render object element. Now what is single child render object element? Too big, I know. But if your widget has a child, okay, then it won't use leaf render object element, it will use single child render object element. So here we have the center, right? And inside center we have our text widget. So we have two widgets. One is center and one is text. So when our rich text is rendering, it will choose leaf, and when the center is rendering, it will choose single child render object. Why? Because it has a child and it has single child. But our applications are made up of multiple children. Like we have rows, we have columns, right? We don't have just a text in center. So at that time, we have multi-child render object element. Rest is same, everything is same. And you might have Till now, you might have seen multiple errors called as render flex, overflow, and all, right? So this is where this render flex comes from your render object. If it is not able to constrain itself into the screen, it will tell you that our widget is overflowed by XYZ pixels on left or bottom or top, like anywhere. So let me just brush you up how things actually happen, and I'm going to use a Pokédex application that I like because anime Pokemon is good. So first we have the layout phase, and on the right hand side we have the Pokemon app that I've actually created, and on the left hand side we have the layout phase which actually layouts the application. I've also created an index. I don't know why, but I created an index which actually tells which is a scaffold. On top, the yellow is the sliver app bar, and I have given it red border because it can change its size. Then we have the Pokédex text in gray, the search box we have below, and then we have the grid view in blue and the grid in purple. Then I've also magnified a single grid single grid cell, and then we have the text of the Pokemon, the name of the Pokemon, the type of the Pokemon, and the image of the Pokemon. So this is how the layouting phase actually works, and the space it has given to the screen and the object is done, the layout part is done, the blocking part is done, and now it will go and create the painting phase. Now in painting phase, each and every small widget is painted on the screen. So the Pokédex text is printed or it's painted, sorry. Then the search icon is painted, then the search text is painted. If you come down, we also have a small slide or small square of our grid view cell, which is again painted separately. And each everything where it's painted separately, it will go into the composition phase, and then it will be composed and a layout will be created, right? It would be arranged, and where arranged in such a way that a complete layout will be created, and then it will rasterize onto your screen. So layout, painting, composition and rasterization. समझा सबको यहाँ पे basic? Final slide, final explanation. When we are using the grid view, you can see we scroll, right? And when we scroll, the grid on the top goes off the screen and new grids come from the bottom. So what happens is when you push the cells of the screen, they go into the scrapped view. Okay, there is this thing called as scrapped view, which a place where that view is scrapped. We don't need them. They go into the scrapped view and they are shifted to dirty view. Why dirty view? Because they have some properties which they know and some properties which they don't. So you can't actually use it. Okay. So it is dirty view where you know its layout, you know the basic composition, but you don't know the new data that will be added to the same view. And then those views are recycled and brought down to the waiting view. And in waiting view, they have given the new data. And at this time, again, can update function is called, which checks if the element and the tree and the run type is true. It will just change or update the widget, else it will re-render. But over here, the re-rendering phase won't occur because it's completely a grid view and we are just scrolling from top to bottom. Any questions? And it was difficult topic, it was advanced topic. I tried my best to make it a bit interesting. I hope it was. Yeah, thank you guys. If any questions, do ask me right now. If later on I'm here available, you can just ask me any questions. And again, special thanks to GeekyAnts for hosting such a beautiful event. And again, here are my socials. If you want, you can follow me on Twitter and Medium and YouTube. Okay, guys, thank you. You have been a great audience. It will fall down.
Thank you, Sri Bhagavat. It was a wonderful talk. You actually helped us really connect few missing dots in understanding what things happen underneath the Flutter engine. It was a great talk. And moving towards the next talk, which will be by Satish, Kumar, and Gaurav Bhatnagar. They will be explaining the effective state management in Flutter using Riverpod. So, a quite little introduction about Satish Kumar. He is a hybrid mobile app developer and a Flutter enthusiast. And coming to Gaurav, he comes with 14 years experience in mobile application development, and also in during his weekends he trains students at Edureka. So, over to you guys.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, so I know this is the last talk, so yeah, I know that it's the Saturday night. Yes, Saturday weekend. Yes, I do understand, but please bear with us. It would be not a long talk. And just to give a brief intro, thanks for a good intro for us. And it's really good to have these Flutter meetups, and means we will try to also have some Flutter conferences in Bangalore soon. So I'm Gaurav Bhatnagar and he's Satish. We work in Maersk. I'm the lead architect there, and we have been using Flutter now since 2.5 years, and we have now migrated all our mobile apps which we have in Maersk, which are enterprise apps as well as the customer-facing app in Flutter. So without further ado, let me start with why state management, right? Um, Means whoever has even just done some minor work in Flutter, they know that okay, it's fine to use some stateful widgets or just some set state, right? It's completely fine to do that, and for a small scale application, it's the state management works fine. But when you have some more complex use cases, right, like where you have to change the settings inside and change the language of your app, their state management becomes really more important and critical, right? And that is where your app's architecture becomes really somewhere where you can at least make sure that it's easier for the new people who are joining in. So it's been what, 3 years now since Flutter has become stable, right? And apps are becoming more and more complex. So I will not go in more details around the different approaches we have. We do have different approaches, and everybody can use whichever is something which is viable for them, right? But the main thing where we are trying to focus our talk today is around Riverpod, for which the basics are provider that came when Flutter was made stable, right? And provider is as means just the talk before us, right? They were explaining about the widgets, the entire way the UI works of Flutter is through widgets. So provider is a wrapper over the inherited widget, right? And it makes it more easy to use, and it becomes like means you can at least handle state in a more like means in a more streamlined manner, and it would be easier for you to at least make sure that you can have a small scale application. So means you can you can set, you can change, or you can transfer the state through the provider. But then, like, just to give you an example, right? When the things start becoming more complex, so then you can see the inadequacies of the provider itself. So this is just a simple example. Since we work with Maersk, right? So vessel is something which is the Maersk ship. So when a vessel is actually leaving the, means actually it's just going to come to the terminal, there are tugboats which come, right? So they call the terminal that, okay, send some tugboats. So I'm just giving an example of this, like there is a class vessel and then there is a class tugboats. So means vessel will require the tugboats, right? But now, so let's say that the vessel class can't exist, they will need to know the number of tugboats. But if you want to combine that using the provider mechanism, you can see the boilerplate code, right? Like it becomes quite tedious. It becomes, because that's the place where provider refuses to accept the value which actually is referencing another provider, right? You will need to use the proxy provider and it becomes cumbersome. So then there are other items, like this is something which is very fairly quite, means what you say, right? You can come across where, for example, as I said, that provider just works with the inherited widget and it is quite resembling the widget tree. So for example, if there is this widget 2 on the right and it needs the reference of provider 2, it's impossible to get it. Means like it's not like straightforward. So this is a small thing. You have workarounds, but when your app is becoming complex, you have like almost 12 to 13 modules like we have in our Maersk app. It becomes a mess, and your architecture is not clean. Then it becomes difficult to understand, and the code is not maintainable. The other thing is it's difficult because another same item, right? Like the widget 4. So in this example is that you have the hierarchy, you have two different providers, but the provider 2 is the same kind of provider with a different value. But widget 4 now needs the counter in provider, but it can't get it. It can't directly parse and get that access. So that's another inadequacy of the provider. So these raised the problem, right? And that's where I think there was a need of a new solution or an abstraction through which we can make our life easier. Over to you, Satish.
Thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for explaining the problem that state management basically brings to the development life cycle. And every developer understands the pain of, managing a state throughout the application and just to make it persistent state, right? So there are a lot of solution as part of the state management. We will be focusing on the Riverpod. So Riverpod is a Dart solution. It's nothing has to do with the platform that we are currently using as a Flutter. It can work with other platform as well. This is a container, right? This is a container which holds all the state that your application interacts with or persists with, and then it also allows to change those states. There are a couple of functions that are available within the Riverpod where you get to interact with them, create providers, and then you can change the state throughout the application. How you can do that basically is you need to have a global scope. So Riverpod basically gives you a global scope. So global scope meaning that your very first widget that comes in your application, right? So for here, if you see the example, main method is the building block where the Flutter execution starts. So my app is my first widget tree in my application, and I'm just using the provider scope to give the access to all the capability of Riverpod. And once you're done with this, you don't need to access or provide anywhere within your other modules, because your modules are going to keep pile on as the development progress, right? So there are a couple of functions as I mentioned, right? So we will see these function in action. So this is a piece of application that I have prepared. So this is a small application, right? So if you see what this application does, basically it changes the theme of the this app, right? And it's very easy to do that by just tapping. You don't see any glitches that happen. But how does it actually, render on the mobile devices, right? So it's just like I'm changing it, and if I go to the next screen, also that theme persists. It doesn't need to reload over here.
the state has been already mutated somewhere, which is globally available for other module to consume it. How we actually do it, right? So let me go to my container. So this is my a container where the actually material is defined, and this is where we actually set the theme, right? So I need to listen to the provider where I'm just toggling this on and off about the dark mode and the light mode. Let me go to the first provider where I have created. So this is a provider, right? Where I have named them as a theme provider, and I'm using something called change notifier provider. And if you see, there is a method available over here is auto dispose. So auto dispose is basically what it does is when this provider is done doing its job, it will dispose it. Dispose it will put it in the garbage. You don't need to manually call something to dispose this particular to free the space. And this particular Riverpod, what it does is it returns basically this class, and what this class holds is it have a state, and this variable is the one where we will be changing or basically toggling the state, and we have a method to do that. So this method will be the one which will be called from the front end. So if I show you the front end, this is how you basically watch. So that was the provider, right? So when somebody provides, there is something called consumer, right? So somebody has to consume it. That's how the name has come as a consumer. And within the consumer, you have a different properties that you can access through. Mostly we will be using the widget references. So this is the widget reference, and what we can do on the widget reference is we can watch, and this watch is the name itself, right? It just keep watching to the state that this particular provider is giving to you, right? And this is the variable which we will be receiving from the provider. And what I do over here is simple thing. I just listen to the state of that variable which is local to this consumer, and then I toggle the dark and night mode, and this is how it basically works. So there are other benefit of having Riverpod, right? If you guys have used the provider, there is always that provider is not defined, something like that, right? It always pops in because every time you need to have a builder, you need to first provide that into the parent provider, and that becomes like mess to have everywhere the providers, right? But in this case, you just have a global scope, so that gets terminated over here. And as I said, right, this is agnostic to the Flutter framework, so it's not dependent on Flutter framework. So it's basically can be used as a provider without having the context to it. So that's a couple of benefit that Riverpod brings. So if I want to put it in a single sentence, right, as Gaurav said, right, provider is basically the inherited widget. So inherited widget goes from top to bottom, where a parent pass data to the child, and that goes to another child, right? So if a provider is simplification of an inherited widget, right? So if provider solves the issue that inherited widget brings, then Riverpod is re-implementation of those inherited widget from the scratch. What do I mean by that is like when we are solving some problem using some provider, right? So we are not asking provider to solve for us. We are directly going using the Riverpod and solving that inherited widget itself by changing the architect of it. So that will be all from this session. Gaurav will continue.
Thanks, Satish. And so yeah, miss, that's where Satish mentioned about chain notifiers. So let me talk about the future and stream providers, right? These are the different flavors now within the Riverpod ecosystem. So when means obviously we will have APIs which we want to integrate. We want to integrate some JSON files and then show it and render it on the screen. So it is something where it might take more time, right? So those asynchronous tasks where we will return a future. We in the Flutter world, we used to have we have future builder and stream builders. So in Riverpod, they have provided us something better, that is future and stream provider. Now the main difference here is that the builders give us a snapshot, and then it becomes too much tedious to go through all the conditions and then render it on the screen. Whereas here I get an async value that's much more easy to manipulate the data, the asynchronous data, and show it on the screen, right? So let me go here, right, where Satish was explaining about how this dark theme works. So here if you see that we have a future provider, and this is basically getting the data from the assets and then rendering that entire container list, right? So in easy, like this right now it is from the JSON asset, but it can be easily from an API itself, right? So here you can see that we have also used auto dispose, so it will clean up after rendering it, right? And then if I go back to the item list provider, here if you can specifically see, we get the async value. Now this is this is the most beneficial item, because here I get this async value, and when I use that when method, I get the different states which are loading, body or error, and accordingly I can easily just render it as per the state which I have, right? If I have loading, I will show a progress indicator. I have the entire response, then I will render it on the screen. Otherwise, if I have an error, then I will just show that error. So it becomes easy to use future build, means future provider, and then it becomes it removes the redundancy which we have through the future builder. And same thing applies on the stream provider itself. Means there you can again use that ref.watch so that you can continue to watch the stream, and then you can get the latest value which is emitted through the stream. Coming back, which we will go to the full circle, as I just mentioned, that combining the provider using the proxy provider was so much of a hassle. The same vessel metaphor I will use. So here you can see that using the change notifier provider, now I just need to combine it, and the code has become so much simpler, clean. I can just use the tugboats and reference.watch, and then easily in the vessel provider I can get the details of the number of tugboats. So that's how it becomes easy in the Riverpod ecosystem. And then there is this modifier that is called as family, right? Like for example, if I now need some more information, I just means I have the details of the tugboat, but if I need some more understanding or more details around that, like okay, what's the color, and if the tugboat is going to be viable enough or not, so means those additional details can also be added using the family modifier. So if you want to add that external information to construct your provider, then you can use the family modifier, and it has a lot of different use cases. Like for example, if you are going to navigate from the list to the details, right, and then you can use the family modifier using that, right? So it makes it more easy to navigate, and the app architecture becomes more cleaner using the Riverpod state management. Back to you, Satish. Thank you.
Yeah. So in previous session, right, we just saw that there is something called change notifier, and it just notify the UI when there is a state change happening on the provider side. Here, we will be using directly state provider. So what is the difference, right? So in state provider, we are not going to notify the UI. We are directly going to change the state itself. And when that state has been referenced in UI, that state going to be automatically updated. So you don't need to worry about if I change it from here, how I'm going to notify the UI side, right? So this is how basically state notifier works. So let me just give you. So this is home page, right? So we have a list here. Okay. So as you can see, this application, right, it has a couple of items on the screen, and when I tap on them, right, it updates. If you see on the top right corner, we are updating the cart value, right? So it just keeps go and just add that number of items that I'm clicking on the UI side, right? So how it is updating. So basically what we are doing over here is, so this is a provider where it has an initial state as empty. That's why the cart was, there was nothing in the cart. So this is, as soon as you load the application, you'll see nothing on the cart until there is some event that is happening on the UI side. And then there is a method which takes in parameter. So we have predefined models where we actually pass some data, and just to simplify it, we have created a model to render the items on the UI side without being worried about what should come with this list item, right? So this is a method which takes a parameter and it basically updates the state. So if you see over here, we are using spread operator. So this state will be empty in the very first beginning, but we are going to add this item list, and that's how it is being updated over here. That's how it basically see on the UI side. It's similar to what we saw in the last one. We are still going to watch that. So that list will be watched. So whatever was happening in the provider, that will be watched here. but how we are actually updating it. So there were a couple of functions, right? There was one of them was read. So if you see in the bottom over here, again we are using the widget reference and we are using the read. So read and watch difference is, watch name itself, it's continually going to watch for any changes. Read is like you just call it and forget it, right? So it's basically for the methods that are there on the life cycle hookup, the Flutter, or the on change or on the tap, right? So this is basically on press method that we have on these cards, and then it just sends this data to the uh, list, and that's how list is being updated. But if I click on this card, right, I have the data over here, and sorry about the render flex, right? So this is how the data in a list being sent, and this is not part of the home page, right? This is part of the card. Sorry, this card, right? And I'm listening the same provider over here. So this provider is listening on different page, but as the whole purpose of the Riverpod is global, right? So from anywhere you can listen on it, you can change on it, and then the UI will be automatically rendered based on whatever change notifier or state notifier you are using. So that's how basically the powerful Riverpod it is. Let me just go to the next. Okay, so the enough of development, right? So when we have a big application, when we keep on adding the module, we need to make sure that the code is testable, and Riverpod gives you out of the box testability itself, right? So you don't need to rely on some other component to enable that testability within the application. So this is a small application test that I have written, like widget testing. I'm just trying to find some widget type which is of the consumer. So somebody if goes change it, it will notify and it will fail in the pipeline if we have the pipeline enabled for these checks, right? So this is how testability is there. So now come the hard part, right? We talk a lot about being powerful, this, that, and all, but it's also become quite hectic that I cannot allow everybody to just go and change the state from whenever they want. So it's very important that when somebody deciding to use Riverpod, to go through the provider to understand how actually the provider works and how you can basically change state and rely on the state, right? As Marvel, right? In Marvel they say that if somebody gives you power, you need to be responsible, right? So great power comes with great responsibility. Riverpod gives you power, but you need to be more careful how you can use it and how you can actually define the state throughout the application. So Gaurav, you want to add something in conclusion?
Yeah. So yes, that's thanks Satish, right? And I would just like to quote Kamal, like means there are like different ice cream flavors, right? Like means what I really like her analogy. So basically, you can use any state management approach which you want. Like these are, you can taste it, you can try it, and then if it suits you, then you can continue with it. So means that's where like for us Riverpod is working, and we really are means that separation of concern is helping us out. But for you, if the block works, please go ahead. We will not ask you that. We just wanted to share that how Riverpod helped us to make the complex application more cleaner. Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions? And we just ran out of time, I guess.
Yeah, I know.
But you guys can post us. I think most of you guys know Gaurav, but yeah, you can post us a question and we will try to answer them.
Yeah. Please post any of us. Yeah, and you can reach us through LinkedIn, Twitter. I will pass on our contacts soon. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks a lot for explaining what the Riverpod ecosystem actually is and how to and when to use it and the difference between the state management. I think most of like we developers actually get stuck somewhere while starting a project while which state management to choose. So it's always a question and will remain always a question. So thank you guys for the clarification. So now we move ahead for the last talk of the day. I would not say a talk though, it will be an interactive session led by Pooja again. I would like to invite Pooja Bhaumik, who is now going to help us how to stand out in a Flutter interview. So the stage is all yours, Pooja.
इसको हटाना है। रुक रुक इसमें कुछ कुछ है ये भी
creating a great profile and talking about Flutter interviews in a way. So I hope that you have questions regarding that. But why am I even qualified to answer this? Like basically, I have been part of like the interview panels and companies, the last three companies in a way, and. Not trying to boast it, but I have never applied for any Flutter roles in my life, and I have always got, requests that okay, can you do you want to interview for XYZ company? So in a way, I can talk about how I stood out in the market in a way that the companies actually approached to like, okay, do you want to apply? We obviously did give interviews, obviously. However, I never had to apply through like LinkedIn or like through the company portals in a way. So I would want to answer questions regarding, what are your doubts about standing out in the market. And I know there are some questions regarding like outside there were some questions regarding like how should I create a great personal brand, etc. But at this point, I'll first answer questions regarding hiring and interviews. So this is not a talk or anything. It's basically going to be driven by you. So I want to start with anyone who has questions on hiring and interviews. So the mic will be passed to you. So anyone? Anything? Anyone who is applying for roles at this point of time? Okay, Satish, are you applying for roles at this point? Yes.
So, we do a lot of interviews. Right? We do a lot of interviews for the guys who are, experienced in Flutter, and there are some interns, right? So for you, right, what is important? Is it like having knowledge about the Flutter or somebody who is willing to learn that Flutter?
Right. So I think I have seen this problem in a lot of candidates that we have also interviewed, and the thing is that people are too much into just Flutter, and it's not right in a way, because technically you should be a mobile developer at the end of the day and willing to learn other frameworks in if it is required by your job. But I have seen, like, okay, people come and like, okay, I'll do just Flutter, I will not even learn Android, I will not even learn iOS. I will like, no, I do not need to, it's on both the platforms anyway, right? No, it is not. You will have to, at the end of the day, basically have to work on like the native code as well. So you need to be willing to actually learn the other stuff as well, whatever is required by your job, by your project, in a way. So somebody who's too stubborn about the Flutter thing, in a way, you're not a Flutter developer, you're a mobile developer. So try to aim for being a mobile developer rather than a framework that may exist today, may not exist 10 years down the line, right? So that's the thing, that somebody, like, if we had to hire someone, we would be hiring someone who actually have knowledge of Flutter but is willing to like work around, to make things, whatever is required for them to make things better. We basically will hire someone like that, not like, nee, I will not try out extra stuff. So that's definitely what I think and suggest. Yes.
Yeah, hi. So my question is that these days, whenever I come to these meetups, I meet students, and many of them say that they or their friends are focusing on data structures and algorithms, and not on any technology or anything else as a first step. Uh, so they believe, I mean, they say that they believe that data structure से काम हो जाएगा. At least they will be able to get in the room, and then they have hopes that it will be good to crack interviews. I was a student 5 years ago. I do not know the landscape these days, because I see that every student has some experience already with them in Flutter, and it feels weird that क्या कर रहा था. So, so there are many students here and many people who hire. So, what do you think can be an ideal way to prepare for getting out of the college and into the workforce?
Right. So the question is basically what is the for ideal for students in a way, and if today in today's world you're only doing DSA, I am sorry, but that will not help you stand out, because everybody is doing DSA. And technically, I am not going to be saying that, oh no, don't do DSA at all, kind of like it's not going to be used and all that. I think problem solving skills is good. The way we have portrayed DSA in the interviews is a different ball game together. That's a different topic completely. But having the problem solving skills is important. However, everybody is learning about, everybody is doing problem solving today, right? Now, how do you stand out? How do you, like today, application base is more important, and it's more looked upon, because today also internships are like so competitive. Like earlier internship was like supposed to like, okay, now anyone should get it, like everyone should just go do a 1 month 2 month internship in their semesters in a way. But today internships are also very competitive, because like I know interns where basically they are working in like ML and AI right in their second and third year. So how does your profile stand out there, because you have just done DSA? Maybe you can solve how to write a like reversal tree or something like that, but what are you going to do with it after that? Once you actually work in the company, you will have to do application based work, and if you do not know languages and you have not done any application based work, you will struggle in the company even if you get selected. Now the question is that you might not even get selected with just that knowledge. So technically, even in my time in my college, on 4 years I had done like around 3 or 4 internships. And I wanted to do it with startups because you basically, the learning growth is exponential. Okay. Like, of course, if you get internships in like, MNCs and all that, great. However, when you are basically building side projects or you basically interning with startups in a way, your learning growth is amazing. And once you are actually in that 4th year where you're actually looking for a full-time job, they were like, okay, this person already knows so much of things. I mean, why should I not hire this person over a person who can only like reverse a tree? Right? Like there's a difference. Like problem solving is great. Now competitive coding is different thing, but problem solving is something that you should definitely have. Competitive coding is another ball game, right? It's basically I do not know if that is that's a different skill in a way. But if you definitely as a student should have side projects, should know more than maybe 1 or 2 languages. It can't be just Flutter again. I feel like just Flutter क्या मतलब JavaScript भी थोड़ा सा try it, maybe because you do not know if you're going to be in mobile or web, right? If you have decided, that's a different thing. But try out JavaScript, try out Python, try out like Java, try out other languages as well. You do not have to be a master in it, but you need to have side projects in it so that you know कि okay, I have experimented with everything. Now I can say that this is what I like. I want to apply in JavaScript jobs. But if you have never tried other things, you have just done DSA, they can put you in any job, any kind of software engineering role, and then you might hate it. Like you might be put into a language that you really hate. Like I hate JavaScript. So if I were put into a job that was in JavaScript based, I would have hated my job. But I actually tried out JavaScript and tried out Java, tried out Android, and then I was like, nahi, meko Android jobs hi chahiye. So that's the thing. Like, I think 4 years is a very good time to figure out what kind of things you like in software engineering. So do not just do DSA. Yes.
Hello everyone, I'm Trashi. I have a couple of questions. One
Okay.
related to data technical only, and the second one is regarding the GT expert code. So first one is like, can you tell us briefly about like how the beginner and the intermediate and expert level of candidate need to join the company? Let's say any of for the basic, you need to have basic knowledge of Wiki and all this stuff, and then intermediate, any kind of briefly can you tell us about that? And the second one you can answer it later. It's about how can we become
I know the question. You don't have to repeat it. I probably got that question 10 times a day. But coming to the first question about like what if you're talking about just as a like a Flutter intern, junior, senior position kind of a thing. Basically, I think one thing that for sure is like when you're applying for internships in a way, technically more important is your Dart concepts or concepts in OOP rather than Flutter. Though okay, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that I have talked to in a way where they can build amazing UI in Flutter, but the concept or like inheritance, yeah, the abstraction and all that, this knowledge was also not very clear in a way, right? Now you can go ahead with that half-baked knowledge to a certain extent only. After that, you are going to struggle if your basics of programming is not clear. So very important is that if you have chosen your first OOP language as Dart itself, then knowing the Dart concepts and working out projects which are purely Dart is very important, because that way you can grow as a software engineer. Flutter you will learn. I'm telling you, this is one of the most easiest frameworks. So you will easily learn Flutter anyway. But now that you have known Dart and all that, I think translating design into code is something that you will obviously should know as an intern or applying for internships as well. Knowing Git, again, it's not related to Flutter, but as an intern you should know Git for it's very important in a way. And what else? Like suppose now talking about junior roles. At that point of time, as an intern, if you should know beginner knowledge of Dart, as a junior, maybe it is like a fresher or 1 year or 2 year experience junior roles. Intermediate knowledge of Dart is required in a way, kind of. And understanding basically state management. But when I talk about state management, I have like talked to interview like candidates where I said like, hey, how will you manage the state in this situation? And they're like, yeah, in block I will do X Y Z. I'm like, मैंने block के लिए पूछा ही नहीं है. I have asked like, how would you manage state? Then you can say that in block this is how it's done. But what is your thought process of managing a state is what we want to know. Do not get married to a state management solution. Like today there is block or there is provider, there is Riverpod. Do not like nahi, if it's I have started with Riverpod तो मैं lifelong Riverpod ही करूँगी type of thing. You do not get married. And even if there is a company who they are like nahi, but we work in block, I'm like, no, I think block is not that efficient enough and all that. Like, you can't convince people because you know Riverpod, right? That will show that, the other question, matlab you're not willing to learn. You're not willing to like expand your horizon in a way in state management is just good architecture. बहुत it is a debated topic in a way and all that, like, oh, this package, that package. It's just a good architecture. That is kind of it. State management हर like state based frameworks में होता है. It's not a Flutter related thing, right? But you need to understand how you basically like people say, do not use set state, it's expensive and all that. You have, and at that point of time you'll be like, so in that case I will never use set state. But did you understand why set state is expensive, or why set state should not be used? Or is it, are they saying that set state should never be used in the entire life of your Flutter application? That's wrong. There are good use cases for it as well. But just the fact that you learned it in some Reddit node or some Twitter thread making set state is the worst thing in the world, you will never use it. That's basically showing a mindset that you do not want to learn. So this will come out in your interviews, by the way. When they ask questions, how you answer is like, nee, I can't use set state, it's very bad. So they will like give a reason. I'm like, there is no reason, it's just it's rebuilding everything, so it's a problem. Like that's how you answer questions that basically will show that how your knowledge is like. What else? Basically for senior roles in a way, I mean, I'm pretty sure I missed some topics, but I will say. For senior roles, knowing architecture patterns, design principles is one thing, and it's not related to Flutter. It's like clean architecture, MVVM and all that, knowing solid principles, dry principle in a way. It's not related to Flutter, it's just how well you architect your app. Because when you're in a senior position, you will be part of discussions where you'll be like, okay, what we are building our app from scratch, what is the architecture should we go for? And that point of time, you will be part of like, okay, no, this is how you should structure it. This is how should the data should communicate with each other, the data flow in a way. So these are the discussions that you will have as a senior, and it's not going to be related to Flutter specifically. Then understanding CI/CD, understanding how to create a testable code base, not related to Flutter again. So I think when you're at a senior position, Flutter doesn't really matter to you. It doesn't matter what framework you're working on. At that point in time, your aim should be like, okay, building basically how should I make the code more maintainable, more scalable, more testable, which that experience can come from any framework. But when you're in a junior or intern level, that time is where your knowledge of Flutter and Dart is basically going to be used. So I think that's a little bit of summary. I might have forgotten some topics for sure. But is there other question? Okay. Shall we take it as the last question? Cool. What? Yeah.
Hi. I want to ask you that while I was also doing Flutter, like one of the things I got stuck was that what would be the topic where I feel confident that I can apply for the company rules? Like,
topics.
Like what would be the topic I have built in Flutter and I can apply for the company rules? I feel confident that after this topic after this much I have learned Flutter, I can apply for in the company for the job roles.
You are right now in college or working?
I graduated from college.
You just graduated from college and you're looking for your first job probably, right? So I think there is no topic as such where you have to like draw the line. Like, ab I can basically apply in a way. However, obviously, it's not like, okay, you have done the Hello World project on a counter app and then you start applying for Flutter roles. That may not work well, obviously, because you won't be confident enough in a way. However, technically, it's like this is my process. I do not learn topic by topic. I try to build some project. Okay, when I'm learning a new framework, I try to build some project. At that point of time, the project might involve UI, of course. It might involve API calls. It might involve local storage stuff in a way. Yeah, basically, if it's a mobile project, then maybe I will add a little bit of a native library, kind of like a camera or like a audio thing, kind of a thing. However, that's when once I've worked on this kind of a project, forgetting the native part in a way, API calls, local store. Is that my cue to stop talking? So things like local storage, API calls, and basically translating design into code is a must before you can say that, okay, I think I can try out some roles, try out some interviews in a way. It may now again it will be a junior role for you, right? So at that point of time, you should be able to tell the interviewer in a way, of course I can learn XYZ other things as well, but this is, I think, is the most basic thing that you should definitely know application wise, like not like you read about it. You can't read about integrating an API and then go to a interview, because you do not have that application brain at that point of time. Okay, what do I do when there are errors in API? What do I do when it's like it's like throwing 500 errors? All that knowledge will come only when you actually build a side project. So whenever you're learning a new framework, think of the app that you want to build. It could be like a clone of something, or something that you actually want to build, because technically you are a product developer, or you want to be a product developer. So why not think of products that you want to build? And these basic things, agar you can manage and not struggling too much with it, then you can start applying. Even if you do not know the native stuff, even if you do not know CI/CD at this point, even if you do not know how to write a test case. A lot of juniors have not written a test case in their first 3 years as well. So it's completely fine, but you should be open to it. But these things, basic things, is definitely you should be comfortable with one, and then your interview will not be that problematic, I would feel.
Can I ask one more? Apart from interviews,
Yes.
how to do content creation on Twitter, like how to start first brand?
So, yes, of course, this is a question regarding basically building a personal brand in a way, and I want to like basically link it to also like standing out in Flutter markets, because now hiring personal brand does not always mean like कि मतलब YouTube बना लिया या YouTuber हो type of thing. ठीक है, that's a level. ठीक है, it's a level. However, what I want to point out is that, like, how did I ever not have to like basically approach a company myself, because I already had a personal brand. I wouldn't call it a brand at that point of time. It was just that I actually used to share my knowledge out in the community, and by that there could be like a lot of things that you could do in a way. Maybe like solving on Stack Overflow, like basically you're like the person who actually is always active on answering questions in Stack Overflow. That's also one type of giving back to the community type of thing. Writing, because when I started writing, you might have seen my stats and like, oh, million views and blah blah blah, all that kind of thing. But for the first 1.5 years, only 10 people read my articles. Okay, and that I'm talking about like 2017 type of thing. It was in 2018 when Flutter articles I started writing is where it kind of became viral. But for the first 1.5 years, I was writing for myself only. Nobody was reading it. But I was not stopping it, because I thought कि ठीक है ना, this article can be a reference for me later. Now I found like a plus point in it कि ठीक है, this is kind of like my documentation is just public. So even today, I have a lot of articles that I've written. I go and refer it myself because I have forgotten it myself. Okay? So I use it as my own personal documentation, which is public. So then somehow it has started working out in a way, the writing thing in a way. However, that's one thing, writing. And even when you're building side projects as well, open source it so that people can read, your best practices, and maybe you read other people's best practices and all that kind of thing. So when you're sharing these open source projects, that is also a content only. ठीक है, ये टेक में बहुत कुछ content बन सकता है. However, that's one thing. And your question about like Twitter and LinkedIn, that is not a content sharing platform. It's a information platform. It's a announcement platform. It's a boasting platform. You can say so. Twitter, rather forget LinkedIn in a way, but Twitter is kind of like a nice discussion platform as well. So it's not really a personal brand platform for like tech people in a way. We just discuss things, we announce things, we tell people that, okay, this is what I'm working on, so that people know. This is just a letting people know platform. The real platforms are actually Stack Overflow, GitHub, or kya hai, Medium in a way, YouTube if you want to show your face as well. So those are actual brand building platforms. Twitter and LinkedIn are not brand building platforms for us. वो actual influencers के लिए होते हैं जिनको अलग-अलग चीजें, like those are different things, right? This is tech stuff where these are not our brand building platforms. It's just a brand notifying platform rather. ठीक है. So that, I think that answers your question, right? Any other question? Yes. Mike.
Yeah, for newbies in Flutter, what do you suggest, like do's and don'ts?
The what?
Do's and don'ts.
For Flutter?
For newbies in Flutter.
Newbies.
Yeah.
Don't be stubborn I would say don't be too stubborn about Flutter in a way, or like not knowing other things in mobile development when you're doing Flutter as well, in a way. Do is, I will say that how many of you are, obviously everyone is like a Flutter developer, how many of you have tried out the native languages? The back is obviously those are the cool kids. However, that's the thing, like why have you not tried out the native language? I mean, tell me any, just raise your hands if you have done Flutter for more than 1.5 years. So in this case, why haven't you tried out the native thing? Is there any reason that you want to give? Like Flutter is just a framework that is talking between two, actually right now 5 platforms or whatever. However, you want to know exactly what's happening behind the scenes. That is the curiosity that should show, right? Now, why you're doing 6 months of Flutter, I get it. I mean, samajh mein aata ki you have not, you're just doing Flutter, right? However, when you're doing 1.5 years of Flutter or more than that, you need to be more curious about okay, how is it translating into an Android code? How is it translating into an iOS code or JavaScript for Flutter Web in a way? That curiosity is what makes you a software engineer, right? So when you are newbie, I want to tell you that be curious about the framework in a way, like you learned about rendering engine in a way. Maybe in the beginning you will not be actually searching about okay, what's happening behind the scenes of the rendering engine. But एक point के बाद you should be curious about it. ये चल कैसे रहा है भाई? इतना smooth कैसे हो रहा है? What is happening in this case? Like if you're not a curious software engineer, it might, like the growth might not be very much in that case, right? So I think that's one do was like definitely try out, be curious about the framework in a way. And when you say newbie in Flutter, do you also mean newbie in like software engineering?
No.
Just Flutter. Yeah. Okay. So do's, I think I mentioned do's and don'ts in also state management is that do not get married to one package. When you say block, are you talking about block pattern or the Flutter block package? There's a difference. Block pattern, design pattern hai. Flutter block is a package that is built on a block pattern. There's a difference. So understand that. When I talk about like, okay, how would you do this in a block pattern? It's like, Flutter block mein there is a block builder and then अरे मतलब मैंने पूछा ही नहीं है Flutter block के बारे में. That's the thing, that do not be too, like your horizon of knowledge should not be a small hole here. You should like extend it in like why this, why not this, why that, why not that, and then extend your horizon that way. So, and do not get influenced by your Twitter threads, debates, and like Reddit debates and all that kind of thing. If there is a debate happening, try to understand why, kind of thing. So I think a lot of what happens in newbies is that they are too influenced, for sure. So I think if you have curiosity, you won't be that influenced. So I think that is the balance that you should have. That try to read about the news in the tech news in that framework, but do not get influenced without actually digging deep. Like ये बंदा ऐसा क्यों बोला, ठीक है? Like when you say Remy Roosevelt, who is like the author of क्या नाम है Riverpod. So in that case, what he talks about Riverpod is like, this is the only truth. But if he talks about the widget tree, just don't accept it as like the only truth in the world just because he's like a very famous personality in the community. Try to understand why did he say that the widget tree is XYZ? Because he's not the owner of Flutter, right? I'm just giving an example. Remy is amazing. He would not influence people. I'm just saying that you will get influenced by people. It's just because like मैंने बोला कि block is the best package in the world, and if people are following me, they will like नहीं पूजा ने बोला तो मतलब सही होगी, right? That's wrong. That's very bad way of looking at it. Like this is, I am not selling brands to you or clothes to you or something. You do not have to believe me. I'm not an expert actually. Maybe even if you've seen the what do you call that boarding show, the boarding development show, you will see that the Flutter developers who work in the Flutter HQ as well, they also struggle with a lot of concepts. So nobody is an expert here. Just try to know the behind the scenes when you are actually saying कि नहीं यही तो सही होगा, क्यों सही होगा ये जानने की कोशिश करो. Yes.
So like you are in the most of the hiring panels there. So what are you like? How you like judge a candidate? Does the question like means you generally first is like you want to go on the Twitter or like you go to their projects there, or if you are like hiring a Flutter developer, so the question is like mostly on the Flutter side, or like you also like ask some other question apart from the architecture or the language, and what are the other things they have done there?
Right. So, question is basically on like how I like now again. Your question is like to me, so I will only say ki how I judge during the interviews. It might be different for different interviewers as well. So, when I take an interview for Flutter role, usually the questions are not too much on Flutter. It's mostly on like, again, maybe if it's a junior or like a mid-senior kind of a role, it's mostly going to be like on architecture, like, hey, so this is the use case, this is the problem in a way, how would you architect an app like that kind of a thing. That would be for like a mid-senior type of a role type of thing. But if it's a very, very junior role, then I might ask questions on Flutter only on like the conceptual parts, not like, okay, how many trees are there in Flutter, behind the scenes kind of thing, or like how would you apply this particular widget or all kind of thing. Nothing on UI as such, but mostly on the conceptual type of thing. Like as I said, ki, why do you think set state is expensive? What do you know about the life cycle events in a way? When should you use what type of thing? So those kind of questions will be there if it's a very junior role. But mostly I try to ask about like the use cases. Ki, how would you build this? How it's mostly mobile development specific. How they answer it, because it's every answer might be different for every person. So it's just like the approach. Are they being stubborn about something, about like a package or something? Are they being open? Are they trying out different solutions in a way, or they're like nahi yahi sahi solution hai type of thing, not trying to discuss more opportunities of different solutions. So those way I kind of judge, but nothing on factual type of thing as such. It's just like how they approach things. And I have been told that I have to stop talking. So, can I take one last question? You tell me. Okay. Yes, you can. Mike.
It's not from Flutter, just a general question. You work in three different companies. What will be the one piece of advice you would like to give? One life experience or one piece of advice? Any
To whom?
To the or
Like regarding what? Life advice could be anything.
Regarding maybe life advice or something that had helped you in your career or in any area of your life.
I guess mostly it's like, there are things that people say that, okay, I want to earn this much, I want to have this kind of a, do excellent work in software engineering and all that kind of thing. I feel a lot of people just stop at wanna do it or want to do it, and they don't actually put that effort in actually doing it today. Like I feel like मेरे को life में कुछ बड़ा करना है, वो बड़ा आज करना है, कल नहीं type of thing. So it's like whenever you feel like, okay, I wanna talk in stage and I want to basically be a manager at one point of time in my career, why not start showing the skills today? You can't be a manager tomorrow if you're not showing the skills today, right? Why not just start mentoring today itself? Like I feel like you're just delaying because I'm not at the age of becoming a manager yet, so why should I even make that effort? So like in a way, I mean, I became a GDE when I was still in college, and I had not even graduated in a way. I did not. I felt like, okay, it's like, oh, I'm too young to do it. I had a huge imposter syndrome as well. I still have imposter syndrome a bit, but I was like, I'm too young to it, and blah 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 kind of thing. And but I actually like, what's the harm? Like I just try it too. Like let me just try it. I'll fail, but I learned from that failure for sure. So I did that leap of faith in a way, and I said, yeah, okay, fine, I'll apply and I'll give the interviews and all that kind of thing. And then I became the GD, and I was at that point of time the youngest GD in the world, maybe. Yeah. So, but in my head, I was like, yeah, thank God I tried. Thankfully, I actually did not listen to my head, who was like, no, you're not worth it. You're too young for it. You're just not good enough type of thing. Because that, even right now, I'm pretty sure I'm nervous about, like, what if you ask me a question that I cannot answer? I have imposter syndrome at this point right now, sitting in front of you. But if I did not have tried all this, I would not have been sitting here as well, right? So that's the thing, that kar lo, try. Like whenever you feel like you're not too good for it, just try it and see if it works out. You may fail at it and then, like, learn from that failure. But if you never try it, you will never learn anything. So I think that's one life advice I will give to you.
The last question is like,
They'll kill me. What do I do? It's done. Outside, you can ask me the question. Anyway, I think that question, I have a video on it. Do you want to watch that? Then what, yeah? Everything is mentioned in that video. So I think that the question is answered. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja. Thank you for such an amazing interactive session. I think you have set the what all matters in an interview. To summarize, I think you just said how to be a software engineer and how to stay as software engineer throughout our career, and yeah, engineer at heart. So let us now have come to the last leg of today's event, which is the panel discussion. We'll be having the panel discussion by all of our speakers. I would like to invite all of our speakers, Vivek, Sunny, Shri, and Gaurav, on the stage, and will be moderated by our CEO, Sanket Sahu. Please, the stage is all yours. We'll just set up the stage, and once it is all settled down, we'll start the panel discussion. Just 2 minutes.
is a blue beard and one is a light blue beard. So I think
Nice.
The first time.
Is that a beard? That
Yeah.
a blue thing? Oh, nice.
yeah, it's a beard.
Great. So, Rishabh, one sec. Can you start? Great. Yeah. Very good session and brilliant talks by all of you, plus Pooja. And I can relate to a lot of things, especially when you said constraints. ये पहले नीचे आता है फिर ऊपर जाता है.
Yeah, thanks.
So it's so humble like us. And also a really great session by Pooja as well, because she shares a lot of ideologies which we share as well at GeekyAnts, especially when she quoted "Don't marry a technology." I think people who are not stubborn to a specific technology, they go pretty far. I really like that. So yeah, so welcome you all. We have a quick panel session, and this is going to be interactive. Let me just pull up the questions. And so we had the QR code, and the questions has come from you guys. The first question is about animation. It's if we use some animation library like Lottie packages for Flutter Web, there seems to be a problem that it was not able to animate it out in HTML rendering. So how it is different from Canvas kit rendering? Sunny, you want to take that? You have the dash.
I'll say first of all that I have not tried web that much to be able to answer this. So
I can try.
एनिमेशन जिसका डॉक्टर है उसको ही हैंडल करना
Animation, yeah, makes
Okay,
sense.
so yeah, I can try. So HTML rendering is traditional rendering where it is not capable of handling a lot of things. Okay, HTML rendering is only good if you want a speed. And Canvas kit rendering does a lot of things. So I guess that's why Lottie faces some problems. And if you want if you want to use Lottie, I suggest go with a Canvas kit. But if you can, do something else. I mean, if you want HTML rendering, do something else. Yeah, that's my take.
is it possible to, I mean, for right now, when you choose HTML rendering, can you choose to render some widgets using Canvas?
No. I don't think so. It
No.
is
Mix possible or
Right
something
now,
like that?
when we create the web, we have option either to render with HTML or Canvas kit. Now, let me chime in on what Vivek said very nicely. So, when you're generating a HTML web, you use the HTML code and the CSS code. And Lottie files, that Lottie, if you see, you get a GIF out of it or a JSON file out of it when you're using Lottie animations. So it's hard to render Lottie animations as a JSON into the HTML rendering part. But when you are using Canvas kit, you get a paint, like you get a canvas and on that it's painted. And on that, the JSON is converted to the paint and then it's rendered. So it's easier when you're using a Canvas kit while you're using Lottie animations. I hope it was clear a bit.
But I'll add one more thing, which is my favorite topic, that is platform views. So even though you think that Flutter is not able to handle your Lottie file, you can still write Flutter in web, not in Flutter. Your Lottie is in web, and you can expose a view from there and then use it in Flutter web. So that is still there, but yeah, there will be some performance issues.
Yeah, because this is
Rerouting a lot.
Interesting. So I'm just curious, since we have like two types of rendering. One is HTML, another is Canvas.
Yeah.
So this is a question coming from me. So do we have option of like server-side rendering sort of thing? Since we are able to like generate HTML, right? So do we have any research or experiments around that in Flutter?
So what I had till now is complete custom thing, not from Flutter batch. So yeah. I sent JSON from server and then
Even I tried that. I gave it a try, server-side UI.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm 50-50 on board, 50-50 off board right now. Still have to explore a lot. There are some packages, server-side rendering, not used much, but let's say still in development phase, we can call it that way right now.
Okay. Makes sense.
I use server-side rendering when we were developing apps in Android, but in Flutter we have yet not explored that.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. I think I have a follow-up question on the same topic. So Flutter Web is it's not that great. I mean, compared to the native side, because native 60 FPS Android IS is really nice. But Flutter 2.0, they came up with the news that Flutter 2.0 is now very stable for web last year, right? So how is the support for Flutter Web right now?
Depends what you have to tackle. Like if you have to create a backend website and something called as a web app, I would use Flutter. If you need something which has SEOs and you need landing pages where you have to actually call the people, then I would choose native website. And again, Flutter web is stable, but the loading process and rendering is improved a lot in Flutter 3.3, but still not as much as you would expect from the native part.
Right, right. So it still is there, but you cannot expect it to use in a production.
Okay.
Yeah.
So only for tools that you want to use, not in public.
Okay.
Yeah, so kind of backend, like you have to check attendance or let's see how the work process is done. For that, you can use it.
Yeah.
I actually use it for that.
Okay, yeah. I've seen a lot of like people using inside a particular authenticated dashboard sort of thing, not really for landing pages.
Yeah. So we are using Flutter Web, but that's a companion to our mobile app.
Okay.
Like for example, like means it's actually a mobile app, vessel inspection app, but it's like the administrators who have to view certain inspections. Then we are using Flutter Web, and that is fine. Like means because the simple use cases, as you said, right? Like then Flutter Web is fine, but when you go for complexities, then it's something
Makes sense. I think we did something very similar for a soccer-based Web3 app which we built. So we had like 100% code sharing between all the three platforms. So yeah, makes sense. The next question is about extending Flutter to smartwatches. How is the support of smartwatches for Flutter?
No. It's still too heavy for smartwatches. In terms of efficiency, they need to be as efficient as possible. But because there is engine, and if you mess up, you will drain all the battery. And running engine itself is difficult for that small device.
Never tried. Don't wear watch. I never haven't tried yet.
So I'll prefer to go with native.
Yes.
Because of performance and a lot of other things. And for one more thing, that because native, the watches are a place which is not yet explored by Flutter and by other cross platforms. But native gives there are a lot of efforts into that. So
makes sense.
I agree with Vivek.
But still, it's all right if you want to have a native, a companion app for your watch. You just add few things that you want to show on your watch, because on watch you do not have full all the features. You only show and let people do a few things. You can do that in native and still have the whole Flutter app. That's all right.
Yeah.
You can
So build like
basically Flutter app in phone and native app in watch.
You can still add native code inside your Android folder or iOS folder, and all the capabilities that you want, you can add there.
Makes sense.
So it will be alright if you want to have that capability in your existing Flutter apps.
Yeah, it means that specifically watch is for notifications, right?
Yeah,
Especially you use it for push notification. So I think like still if you want that push notification integration for the watch, then it will be useful.
Yeah, and as Sunny said, like if there is any extension or visual aspect to it, then probably we can just use the Android and iOS folder then.
Yeah.
Maybe. Okay. Good stuff. The next question is about upgrading to 3.3. Shall we upgrade to every new version like upgrades to 3.3 and packages update like Riverpod 2.0? If no, when is the right time to do it?
Okay, so when we create applications, this is very important part. So basically, what I usually do is I personally alone upgrade first to the latest versions of everything, and I make sure if it is working and if all the packages are there up to date, and if I get a green signal, then I tell my team to update. If not, I tell them to wait for a month or two, not more than that, because then when new version comes, the older versions are deprecated, and when you take a huge leap of update, then a lot of time goes in redeveloping the code and refixing the previous errors that they have or the deprecated methods. So one person in the team rest can stay on board till the time when he gives a green signal, and then we can go. In the team, it's good. If you have your personal project, I would suggest to use FVM and use FVM to go to a single project where you can update to 3.3 or the latest version. And to your production base, just keep the old version unless your teammates are on board with you, and then you can go ahead. That's what I personally follow.
Is it similar to NPM?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I see a lot of counterpart from JavaScript world to the Dart world.
Well,
but I'm not supposed to say that.
Well, Dart was prepared to replace JavaScript.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So I used Dart when it was announced for Angular.
Angular Dart.
Back then. So so they built the Dart to JS compiler first, and then it came on web before it came for Flutter. So makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
Great. So the next question is again about Flutter Web. Since we spoke about Flutter Web, how do you feel about the future of Flutter Web? Like I see Google is working a lot on that. So how do you guys feel about the future?
I think that the use case that you mentioned, that you have a companion app that does a few features on web, that kind of use case, for that kind of use case, it is great because in most of the products you have not only your regular customers, the world, but you have specific kinds of people like your inspectors in your case, can be for example shopkeepers, general public. You can have different kinds of interfaces for different kinds of people who are using the same thing. So you can build some things with Flutter Web, some things on desktop, some things on mobile use, and sharing most of the code.
Yeah, I think that's for today, right? Like, how about the future? Like, do you see something like Next.js happening to Flutter, or server-side rendering, SSG, or maybe code splitting, all those things?
I'll add another UX point of view. That we all know that 5G is here, okay, and we all know that we have pretty faster broadband now. And the issue is with Flutter Web was a slow rendering, right? कि ठीक है यार load होने में बहुत time जा रहा है. It is taking much time. But with faster speed, with faster machines, okay, we know that our application will be faster, and with a simple use case that you already have a mobile app and you want a Flutter Web from that, okay. So in that use case, you can go with Flutter Web in future, and but with the again one more point in mind that the native is always best. Yeah. So if you have already things in Flutter, or if you have planned that you want to reuse it, then go with the Flutter. Otherwise,
but as the first entry point for web application, Flutter is still, I mean, not going to happen in the near future.
No,
not so soon.
Go for mobile first.
Yeah, because it was built with mobile first in mind.
Yeah.
Until all the browsers decide that let's have all the Flutter support related, Flutter related stuff in the browser itself, so that you can ship only Flutter code and not whole engine and all those heavy stuff.
Yeah, that is also one point which Google might enforce, especially in Chrome.
Makes sense. Who knows?
Yeah. But I would like to just add a counterpoint, right? Like the thing is that since we are all thinking about mobile first, but a lot of times means I'm working as an architect now, so like a lot of time I've been asked that why we should use a different technology for web when you are already working means because what the web people say that we are making a responsive UI. Why you need a separate app? Considering that now the app means your mobile is saturated. You people if they are going to use your app just for 2 times, they might not download the app. So that is where, like as you said about the future, perhaps like I would really wish that in future it would be more easier that we can use the same technology for both web and mobile, and it will become easier for us to not like always have that battle with the web developers.
Yeah, right.
That's a wish list.
Makes sense. Yes. Good stuff. Next question is about how to contribute to the Flutter core, because we have few of the React Native core contributors in the house. They have contributed to the core of React Native. So since Flutter is largely controlled by Google, is there an opportunity to contribute to the core of Flutter? And have you guys done it? Or
have you done it?
Yes.
Okay, I tried, but it was never merged.
So the simplest way is to look at the problems that we face every day. Probably you are trying to do something like I was trying to do add to app at our org, and at first I followed the doc, but I found out that many things that are shown on the doc is not true right now. You can take that and help update that. That's the simplest thing that you can do, because our collective experience can be used to push, keep everything updated and help anyone else who will now try to use that to web. If you go and try, then at least you'll have facts for current state and not that was there 1 year ago, because right now the page for add to app is showing wrong illustrations on how to create a module and things.
So
those
basically,
photos need to be
yeah.
updated.
So basically, you're saying it's not about code. It's
You can
about the whole thing.
contribute in
Yeah,
each and every way.
you can contribute in docs. You can contribute.
Let's say keeping the
video.
core structure now main. If you want to contribute to the core Flutter library or Flutter framework, you have to make sure that point or whatever issue that you have, you cannot just push your new code. When you're pushing the new code, you will have to submit test cases and code coverage, and I think it is 90 plus code coverage that you have to give when you're actually submitting the PR. And if you are doing that, they would actually accept that PR. It won't cause much problem if you are submitting with test cases. If you just submit the PR, they won't even look at it. Just normal PR.
Makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. And not only
It's
code,
really easy to contribute to Flutter repo.
Yeah.
As compared to Android, it is much easier.
It is very easy. It's open source. Like you can actually just create a PR right now.
Correct.
and about code. Many people think that when we talk about contributing into a project, it's only code. It's not that. This time, Hacktoberfest has emphasized on every other aspects other than code, like helping correct the documentation or add documentation, helping raise issues, build demos on how to use specific features. So these things also make impact. And if you want to contribute in code, don't fear that मुझे नहीं आता.
Yeah.
Right now, I do not know, but I know that I am facing this issue, and I think that this can be fixed. Raise a detailed issue. You put all the code samples that you can give to help someone else regenerate your issue, and help them understand why it should be different. So you don't have to write code, but if you explain well, there are people who know the thing, and they will be able to quickly solve it.
Thanks.
So plus one, right, about documentation. That is something which I also try to see in our code, right? For any new person, it becomes very difficult to understand. So it's like even if you are not adding to the core, it's good to add on the documentation part, right? I completely agree with you.
Yeah. Even we wrote a part of the Flutter documentation.
Yes.
There's a section called React Native, Flutter for React Native developers. So we composed the entire part of it. So documentation makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
But the question was more towards the code
Coding
side.
part.
But I think that's also pretty flexible if you write it detailed. So that's a good takeaway.
You need to add test cases.
Yeah, test cases is important because Flutter has its own automation testing, right? Unit widget integration testing. So yeah, they are pushing testing as well.
Makes sense. Great. Next question is for Sunny. What are the disadvantages of add to app?
First of all, a little bit of complexity that you are adding into app, that you have to help the team understand how it works and how to work with it in future if we have to. Second is size. It will, while if you build the app in debug mode, it will add 12 plus 12 plus 12 plus as many APIs that you have. And app, there are only 3 supported APIs. So in debug, into 3, and in release, it will take nearly 5 MB per API. So keep that in mind. आपकी app का size will increase by 15 MB, 16 MB at least.
Okay. That's the disadvantage. Okay. Any more follow-up disadvantages?
Yeah, there is some performance issue as well, because if you're adding a Flutter, basically Flutter app there, so there are lots of to and fro happens with platform and the Flutter. So there some kind of performance issues may happen.
I disagree.
If you implement it properly, then
Sunny is
not.
expert in implementing things.
Yeah. So yeah, and one more thing which is a disadvantage, that Flutter and Android, they run in very different environment. So you have to pass each and everything to Flutter if you want, run that, and also if you want to send anything, for example, events. So it's better that you have a platform channel. So a lot of things going flowing in between. So that's one disadvantage.
But how does testing become difficult? Because I have seen that it was difficult for us.
Yeah,
right?
it becomes difficult.
So if you're writing your test suite in, for example, native toolkit.
Yeah.
Like the one which Android recommends.
Correct,
Provide,
correct.
they provide. The thing, what will happen that if you are doing some kind of integration test, that you are testing the whole flow that includes both native and Flutter views, you won't be able to do it with one the toolkit that natives provide or
Yes.
Flutter provides. You'll have to use something else like FPM.
Yeah.
You'll have to inspect using FPM and then
Use it.
what do you call it, interact using FPM. So that FPM will be able to connect with both Android and Flutter because it can inspect views. It does not reference things directly. It just inspects.
Make sure that the accessibility keys are there. So that we can
And those.
Good stuff. The next question is for Vivek. Is there any performance issue if we use a lot of animations on a single page?
Yes, if they are not implemented in the right way, because as a Flutter developer, things are very easy in Flutter. As I shown you, right? These animations are really easy. We were able to do complex animations, But when you have a lot of things, for example, in our Zeshmoney app, we have around 10 different, UI widgets which are rendering based on the API calls. Okay, and if I add animation there, and if by chance it calls my build method again and again on each frame, that means I'm rendering whole 10 widgets again and again, and it will cause performance issues. So yeah, only one thing is, if you can implement it in proper way, it will work. And
Implemented proper way would be, I guess, having limited number of animation controllers.
That is also one part.
And then have like the value of animation controller being computed in different render functions rather than having multiple.
So the one animation should not affect the other widget. That is one most useful.
And you can inspect that by using DevTools.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. The next question is for Gaurav. What are the benefits of using Riverpod over Block?
Yeah, thing is that. So yeah, means in the terms of, like, we also started with Block only, right? Like the only main caveat is the boilerplate code which you get, right? And now as you are making your app more and more complex, there are almost like 10 to 15 modules getting added. It really becomes, yes, means you can continue to use again, right? Like that's what I had mentioned in my talk also, that I completely agree with what Kamal said. Like you can have different ice cream flavors. It suits you. Please continue to use that. Like your testing is, for us, testing was becoming quite tedious. And again, right? Like for simpler apps, it is always what you want to use as Block. But yes, Riverpod is something where it is giving you that kind of flexibility, and it's giving you that entire way of making your architecture more cleaner in complex apps. That's why I recommend that.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just curious because Mobux.dart was announced on this stage. So have you seen anyone using Mobux at all in Flutter apps?
So in my previous organization, we have used it extensively.
Okay.
And yeah, for that use case, it was very good. So I'm block lover. So when I went there, so I thought, yaar, nikalo isko block karo. But then I worked on the use case. So I found out block is not useful for this. Mobx is good. So again, based on your use case, as you say, you can.
So what I personally do is, let's say you have a huge application. I start with Riverpod generally because Riverpod is easier to speed up the process.
Yeah.
And when we are working in a team, I can create the architecture fast. The team can build Riverpod, change notifiers and everything very fast. And let's say if there is some use case where I actually need block for that specific portion in the application, then I can use block. So I use Riverpod as well as block in the same application. So I'm not like, if I'm using a state management, I will use that one state management throughout the entire app. I'm open to implement 2, 3, even set state at some point. Like I'm fine. Like if the use case is matching for block, I will use block. If it's matching for Riverpod, I will use Riverpod. I won't be stuck. Okay, I have started with the Riverpod, then I will use Riverpod till the end.
Yeah.
If I get point, I will just change it.
Boils down to don't get too stubborn.
Yeah.
And this always ends in it depends.
It depends.
Every question ends in it depends. Yes.
I have a question for Shri. So we saw how powerful Riverpod is. So in what case would you want to choose block when you already have knowledge of Riverpod in your team?
Yeah, so not as in when I choose if I using Riverpod, I will go. But it was just a statement where if a chance comes where actually I need block, then I won't be stubborn that I'm using block. I'm using Riverpod. I won't go to block. I would just integrate it.
I can give that answer. So in block we have two important things. One is event and states.
Yes.
And this is the best thing for which I love block, because at any point of time, based on the event, you can predict the state. And while using provider and MobX, it was not a case, because based on the value you have to define the state. So because of this, I never used that in my bigger projects, and yeah, so that is the answer.
We can go over for 1 hour.
Yeah, on state management.
Yeah, state management is a very vast topic. So anyway, we'll move on
Yes.
for the timing. So this question is for Sri Bhagat. Where can I see different trees in Flutter?
Okay, so yeah, so when we are first of all to
Guys,
see different.
just 5 minutes before we head out for pizza, so just.
So when we see different where we can see different widgets in Flutter. So basically, what you have to do is make sure your application is running in debug mode. Then on the right hand side bottom panel, we get check DevTools or open DevTools. Just click on that. A pane will come down where you can choose open in web browser, and once you open in web browser, you will get the complete DevTools. We have an option to click widget trees and render objects, and in that you can actually see which trees getting rendered where, and what is the size, how it's laid out, and what is the ID as well. So in render object, if you go down, you can check the ID, and if you will use set state to change your UI, you will notice that some IDs are same. For example, I have displayed about the text widget. The ID will be same, but the text inside that type will change. So that's how you can check where things actually go and how things actually work behind the bar.
Interesting. Just last question before again pizza, beer, diet coke, whatnot. Okay, this question is for Sunny. The last question: how do you debug Flutter code after adding a Flutter module in a native app?
Yeah, I explained that. So, in all three IDs, when your app is running, for example, you ran the app using your Android Studio or Xcode. Once you are in your Flutter view, the Flutter's debugger becomes available, and you can connect to it by finding an option in your IDE called attached to Dart process or attached to Dart process running on phone or something. And on terminal, you can run Flutter attach. And if you are using IDE, it will give you all the features that you have when you are building a regular Flutter app. So you have all the power where to build and debug the Flutter side of things when you're working.
Interesting.
But you should add, right? Use 32 GB M1.
Yeah.
With Ember, it's fine. I can still run both sides of emulators, the Android one and iOS emulator, and debug simultaneously. Have two IDs, three IDs, so it at least handles it.
With M1.
With Ember,
You had that with M1.
Yeah, M1 required.
only for Ember.
Minimum requirement.
Great. I think that's the end of the panel. Thank you so much, all four of you. And we'll have a picture, probably. Yeah. Akansha, come over. Thank you so much for hosting this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you all of you. Thank you everyone for attending us, and we appreciate your time. We appreciate all of your time, and to make your Saturday evening a bit more exciting, so we have arranged pizzas for you. So before we leave, we'll all take a picture. I hope you have enjoyed throughout the show, and we hope we have served you well. Let's get
From yourself.
We'll have a one photo first, and then probably the group photo.
Ashwin?
Yeah. We have everyone.
And Tashi.
Yeah.